across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. It is fast approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. Great to have your company, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, any other way of listening or watching. Fabulous to have you join us. So much to talk about today, as it always is. And if you miss anything from the show, missed anything from the shows this week, do go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up, we're going to be discussing the fabulous economic news. Oh no, sorry. There isn't any. Inflation is rising to 2.9%. We got the latest figures, didn't we, on unemployment. A huge number of people more on a universal credit yesterday. We are looking at energy costs as a big driving force behind that. Borrowing costs for the government, absolutely sky high. Our borrowing costs for our debt, which is going up and up and up, fast approaching 100% of our economy, or our GDP, is just going up and up. And frankly, huge amounts of any money that was raised in tax is now just frankly going out on paying for our debt interest. But don't worry, everything's going to be solved. It's all completely sorted out because Andy Burnham says that number 10 North, that door and prefab building or something up in Manchester, is going to take over responsibility for economic growth from the Treasury. It's part of what he calls a huge transfer of power from Whitehall. So that's going to solve everything. I mean, I'm not entirely sure that the Treasury's been in charge of growth all this time anyway, because I'd like to think we might have bloody well noticed some growth at some point. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about net zero obsession from Labour costing each cash-strapped family more than £500 a year, according to some Tory figures. Andy Burnham has launched his rough sleeping plan. He says every rough sleeper in England will be offered accommodation this winter as part of his efforts to end rough sleeping. No one left outside at Christmas. Well, that's all just fan-dabby-dozy, and it's a lovely aim. Is it actually going to work? How much is it going to cost? And what does Andy Burnham's talking about it. So is Angela Rayner as Housing Secretary today. Not entirely sure she understands the difference between rough sleepers and homeless people. Rather different. But we'll be talking about all of that. And, of course, the migration issue. Particularly Lib Dem leader Ed Davey calling for the UK to join EU Migration Pact to tackle small boats. So basically, you have to claim asylum at the first place you land. So basically, it wouldn't be landing in Britain, so we wouldn't have a problem. Except, of course, we'd have to take, quote, our fair share. That fair share, given that we're a very big country, would be very, very, very large indeed, and we'd have to take them. Brilliant idea, as always, from the not Liberal, not Democrat, Liberal Democrats. Also that French politician demanding that Brits hand over even more cash tackle migrants. He says the UK is a permanent attraction. I mean, he's not wrong there, is he? But I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. In particular, about the huge transfer of power out of number 10 to number 10 North to tackle growth. I suppose, do governments actually deliver growth? Good growth in every postcode was what we were told. Given the latest economic figures, given the energy prices driven by our net zero obsession, because that's the reason why we've been hardest hit by what's happened in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, given that that is actually a huge part of a lot of the problems we've got. Lack of productivity, public sector workers, largely a huge number of them still working from home, half of Whitehall still working from home. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all that. Is this the solution to all of our problems? Do give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1. Standard network rate message. But your thoughts, as always, welcome on any and every topic. You get to decide that. Delighted to say joining me today is Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. Good morning.
Good morning.
Really good to have you in. I mean, we've got those unemployment figures, 4.9% yesterday. Another 700,000 people claiming universal credit since last year. Not sure you can blame that on the Tories. Inflation rate's risen up from 2.6% in the year to 2.9%. Basically, it's driven by energy bills, the cost of gas in particular. We had that off-gen price cap going up. It's going to go up even more come October. But don't worry, we're going to get, was it 86p a week off thanks to Andy Burnham. Borrowing costs are near a 2-decade high. Well, cost of borrowing those gilts is just, I mean, sky high, 5.8% more compared to other countries, double some other countries. But it's all going to be sorted out because Number 10 North is going to be delivering good growth in every postcode, no longer going to be the Treasury in Whitehall doing it. Is that the solution?
Listen, I want to sound upbeat, I want to sound positive, I want to make start on the front foot. So what I'm going to say is, none of this is going to work, but I'm going to say it in a really upbeat voice to make it sound as if maybe it's not all doom and gloom.
From California. None of this is going to work.
None of it's going to work, but maybe it will. I don't know if I just sound hopeful. Honestly, it's sweet in a way to see Andy Burnham trying to come up with something completely left field that nobody's thought of, that people will go, oh my word, a new idea, nobody's ever thought of that. And his solution thus far is, as you say, a sort of a weird version of devolution, although not necessarily to all of the north of England, it's just to the part that he lives in and that he likes, and that means that his family life is not massively inconvenienced. And on top of that, he's going to be taking more jobs away from people in the Treasury who, admittedly, do not do a very good job of creating economic growth. And what he's going to do is he's going to give it to more of his own lackeys who famously are pro-business and pro the free market, and they just love growth.
But by the way, is he going to, because we already know that the boss of Number 10 North is a Whitehall official of the Treasury who is going to now move, well, he's in a very posh hotel. Nice pool and very nice rooftop bar, by the way. I might head there. Although I might bump into some people from Number 10 North, so I probably wouldn't enjoy it. Company would be a bit dull, as I imagine. But he's basically commuting at great expense. OK, it's not on first-class travel. We're not paying for that. But still, have you got an economy ticket during rush hour lately across the country? And then he's being put up in a hotel, all expenses, and then he goes back home to his £2 million home in Islington. It's the same people. They're just pointlessly getting a train up north, and then they're sitting in the north making the same useless decisions. Surely the answer, if you want to make sure we've got growth, you need entrepreneurs to be able to set up businesses. You need businesses to be able to expand. You need people to have the money to spend. You need people to be able to get jobs. I don't know, maybe don't tell people that anyone who's running a business or is made themselves a success through their own hard work is somehow a bad person who should be taxed more. Maybe don't put a specific tax on jobs, national insurance rise. Maybe don't make employing people too expensive with that national insurance rise and, minimum wage going up to a point where, with all due respect, a heck of a lot of people aren't worth that to the business. Maybe don't do all those things and non-stop, regulatory red tape and non-stop problems with anyone trying to get anything done that has to be done via any government agency. Maybe that might help. Maybe don't have massively high energy costs, 4 times the cost of energy in America and much of Europe, so that businesses can... I'm thinking there are quite a lot of things.
Oh, all of this, Julia, is revolutionary.
And I'm not a business person or economist.
It's all revolutionary, and revolutions involve violence, so that therefore is dangerous hate speech, and you shouldn't say it because you're basically a fascist. That's all of that you've just said is incredibly right-wing and dangerous, and it shouldn't be allowed. And this whole station should be censored and shut down, along with most of the rest of the mainstream press.
Polanski didn't tell us I invited you into the studio.
Oh, we're not talking about that today.
That
was the kind of leading into that. No, I'm particularly tickled by this idea that we are all very dangerous for asking questions. But we are dangerous intellectuals. No, honestly, as I say, it's all just a bit of smoke and mirrors. It's trying to make it look as if something new and exciting is happening, and absolutely nothing is. As you pointed out, it's the same people. They've just been transplanted from one city to another. And the thing is, I wouldn't even mind necessarily if they were getting first-class travel, because they're still on the same train that won't arrive on time, because the infrastructure doesn't work properly.
With no Wi-Fi.
So it doesn't actually make any difference if they're in first class or not.
You spend more time on that West Coast mainland trying to get Wi-Fi to work.
That's
or
the
even
thing.
Take off the Wi-Fi and just try and get your phone to work. No, that doesn't work either.
I was going to say, if anything, in first class, it's more irritating because you have the extra sockets and supposedly everything, and it's not there either. So actually, you're sat there going,
first-class travel.
Yes.
Sorry, have you...
To Manchester, no.
I was going to say...
Why would I?
Have you taken out a new mortgage recently to get on a first-class train?
Everything I want is in the other direction from Manchester, so no, I've not been on a first-class train.
There we are, No, but again, this is the solution. This is an interview in the Times, and it's just, it's just absurd. The idea that this is going to make any difference whatsoever. That's the thing. I'm sort of flabbergasted.
I feel that we're at the stage of British politics where, as you say, you can list all of these things that we all know won't change anything, but basically the position of the politicians is to just shrug and go, it might.
I think it's a mistake to think that governments deliver growth.
Oh, no,
unless you're in
true.
a totalitarian regime like China. I mean, don't give them ideas. We're on the way there, folks.
Yeah.
But other than that, they're in charge of everything. Your 10-year plans and things. Okay, at least they do. Say what you like about Xi Jinping. He does a 10-year plan, which we don't even do. We don't even do a 24-hour plan. Andy Burnham's policies don't last much longer than that. But the reality is, what government should do is they should regulate. We need checking that people aren't running monopolies and on unfair pricing and things like that. But fundamentally, it's the job of government to enable businesses to create growth, create jobs, make sure, and I approve of things like the minimum wage and rights, workers' rights to keep people treated fairly. That's the job of government. Otherwise, get the hell out of people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's amusing that you're sort of comparing it to communist China, because I do think that there's a certain degree of both. The way that this is going is sort of a North Korea, South Korea divide. Oh, everything will be produced in the North. The North will be the hard-working heartbeat, not like those lazy, opulent, fat cat capitalists down in the South. That's sort of where we're heading now. Well, don't worry, everything will be taken care of just as long as it's in the North.
But there were loads of massively productive, hard-working people running businesses, doing their best in the North, who are being completely, have their hands tied behind their back by local and central government structure and regulation.
Exactly. It's being fetishised by these politicians.
Oh, it's absurd.
It
is embarrassing. Let's also talk about the very, very first pledge that Andy Burnham made when he walked into Number 10, when he said, firstly, I'm going to go in now and I'm going to abolish rough sleeping. It's like, brilliant. Well, good luck with that. I mean, he's not going to abolish rough sleeping. There are myriad reasons why people sleep rough, and none of them is good. But the government is committed to offer everyone a route off the streets this Christmas. So you're going to be offered, not everyone's going to take, that is going to be reality. But it's not about Christmas. It's, homelessness is not just for Christmas, it's all year round. We've seen a growing spate of it. I mean, round my way, it varies between largely people who are drug addicts, who beg outside the supermarket and then go to the back of the supermarket later on and do their drugs, and then they get the tube home, not paying their fares, obs, and a lot of foreigners who I can largely identify from what I can as Romanian.
Yes.
And I have conversations with them. You're either here legally, in which case you're entitled to benefits, you shouldn't, but I'd rather you went home, or you're not here legally, if you're not Romanian or you're not European, then I'd like you to leave the country. Because I really think, I don't think anyone should be sleep rough, certainly anyone from abroad, no right to be here. There are many reasons why people are homeless. I don't think that just giving up... We're going to find accommodation for these people. First, a lot of these people are single men. A lot of them are men who have major drug and alcoholic addictions. Now, there is, we're going to be talking to Lord Bird, who set up the Big Issue. He's a wonderful, wonderful man who's been homeless himself and understands this far better than you or I ever would. There's a lot of talk about, they're but for the grey sky, as in, this could happen to anybody. You can, family deaths, job loss, divorce, troubles, mental health problems, alcoholism. Things can spiral out of control and people can find themselves on the streets. Young kids, young teenagers running away from violent or sexually abusive parents. There's lots of things that goes on. But a lot of the issues aren't about not having a roof over their head. That's a start. But we know that a lot of people then won't go into those hostels because they fear violence there, but also they can't keep any tenancy because of their addictions and the problems that made them homeless in the first place. It's a much more complicated business than, I'm Andy Burnham, smiley, smiley, smile, let's give everyone a home.
Yeah, it's what he's done, Andy Burnham, is because this is something that is very noticeable in major cities, particularly Manchester and London, but also Edinburgh and Glasgow.
Well, it was more noticeable in Manchester because it went up during his
It went up under him. But that's why he's doing this. He's trying to, if you like, create a problem that is a problem, but is not a problem on the same scale as, say, the small boats. He's trying to create a new one that he feels that he can solve more easily and will also get a lot more sympathy for solving. That's the key thing.
And it is something we should try and solve.
It is, but it is a structural problem, and it is downstream, of major structural problems. You'd be more likely to end up with fewer people both living on the streets and without permanent addresses if you were to solve the economic stagnation of this country. As you say, a lot of that is downstream. But then we do have to take the foreign national element into this equation, in particular the Romani issue. This was predicted. This is what a lot of them do in other parts of Europe as well.
Well,
and
it's
with
professional begging as well.
Well, it's not even just that. It's a front for drug dealing, because then you know where your drug dealer is because he's sat by the side of the street. street, and also pickpocketing, which just wasn't a thing on the scale that it is now, maybe 5-10 years ago. This was predicted. None of those people should be here, and they shouldn't actually be getting a lot of sympathy because they're doing it professionally. This idea that they're all sort of helpless beggars, no, they're not.
I've said before, there's a lady who begs along my local high street, although I have bumped into her in Oxford Street as well. I went, oh, hello, you get around, glad your travel card's working. But genuinely, she's got a picture of my little girl pretends not to speak English. When I speak to her, she definitely understands English. And it is absolutely fascinating because this girl, I mean, for a start, that picture was taken in 1960. This woman has been begging for 20 years in my street, my local high street. And it's, I mean, I said to her genuinely, I mean, you know, you must be a great-grandmother by now. That kid ain't a kid. That kid ain't at school anymore. But that kid's already looking at their pension. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it'd be lovely if you can. But again, we don't need more sort of people saying nice things and wanting to do nice, you know, kumbaya, peace to the world, no more war, everyone's happy. That would be lovely. You need to actually be a bit more practical about it. And as we know, what happened in Manchester was actually, I mean, there is that argument that when he was offering people homes, that actually you ended up with a situation where more people, the word went round, the homeless, I imagine they call it a community. It's not a community. And people started travelling to Manchester to get homes. Yeah. Whether that was the case or not, I don't know. But yeah, it just looks like another bit of pie in the sky. And again, it's another thing that is just one of those small announcements he makes you think, this is not tackling any of the big issues. I mean, I'm just surprised he didn't just say give them free bus passes, because as far as I can tell so far in this government, Andy Burnham's solution to most things is more free or cheaper bus travel. I mean, the man has a serious bus fetish. It's borderline weird and kinky at this point.
I think something like that actually happened in Los Angeles or San Diego, one of the East Coast cities in the United States. A particularly progressive, as they call them, administration came in and tried to give lots of stuff to the homeless, you know, free housing, you know, supplement drugs for heroin addicts. And what ended up happening was, of course, more and more homeless people ended up flocking to the area because they thought, well, why wouldn't I? This sounds great.
Exactly,
so,
exactly. Let's also talk about the latest migrant stories. I mean, so many of them. A French politician has demanded that Brits hand over more cash, more, to tackle migrants. He has branded the UK a permanent attraction. I mean, that's good to know. This is Xavier Bertrand. We heard of him before. He's the regional president of Hauts-de-France, which is, you know, around the area of Calais. He said, we're a permanent attraction for migrants, and he demanded that deal where UK Border Force officers work in France and vice versa is paid in its full price. The thing is, it's in his interest, in his people's interest, his local voters' interest, for us to be able to return those migrants to France and for the French to stop more of them leaving. Because if we did, hey, you get picked up, you're back in France. You get picked up, you're back in France. No one's paying, whether it's this week, £5,000 or £3,000 or 500 quid to get on a boat to be turned back. No one's going to pay for that. So what are they going to do? Are they going to stay sitting in Calais? No, they're going to go somewhere else. It is absolute madness that the French don't cooperate on this. They won't. Meanwhile, we have got the Lib Dem leader Ed Davey, neither Liberal nor a Democrat, I'd like to point out. He wants to overturn the Brexit referendum without another referendum. He's called for the UK to join the EU Migration Pact to tackle smuggled boats, and this would basically mean the requirement that you should claim asylum in the very first country that you land in Europe. Well, rather usefully, it almost certainly won't be the UK, in which case, you know, oh, good, you think, great, so that'll be Italy's problem or Greece's problem or Spain's problem. No, then the EU shares them out. Remember this big battle that Hungary had with the EU, went, you can keep fighting us, we ain't taking our, quote, fair share, we don't want these people, thank you very much. But basically, we would then have to take, quote, our fair share. As one of the larger countries in Europe, our fair share would be a heck of a lot of people.
And also,
madness.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about the Hungary thing was that they worked out, well, the economic cost would be long-term rather than just taking the EU fine in the short term. And we're like, well, we'd be mad not to take this deal. It's going to cost us so much more. Please keep on fining us. This is a much better setup. But I was under the impression that we had left Europe. I was under this mad impression that actually we didn't have to sign up to every single shared scheme that the Europeans have. But it does seem to be a sort of a default response of many politicians who deeply wish we were still in Europe, who say, oh, but XYZ system that Europe has set up, they're all perfect, they're all wonderful, and we should sign up to everything.
Well.
It's so curious that they keep on wanting to sign us up to more and more things coming out of Brussels. I have no idea why they're doing that, and why it is that they think that these things are going to magically work, given that Europe is working so well as it currently is.
Yeah.
What a bizarre situation. No, I mean, Ed Davey, we all know what's going on with him.
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
rejoined by the back door, and let's be nice to everybody who comes over the channel, because they're all fleeing a war zone, and they're all women or children under the age of 12, magically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, comments from Labour MP Sam Rushworth, who was on Jeremy Cowell's show earlier. He was asked about, what's to blame for illegal migration. I think what we do need to do, he says, to look at is what are the pull factors, and I think there's two big pull factors. One is that they speak the English language, because we spent a couple of centuries going around the world colonising it and teaching everyone our language. I mean, actually, people turn up speaking a fractional language. The reason why people speak the language is because all they've seen is English-speaking TV and films and music. That's why. And then he said, we've got a network of people that speak our language, and the other is that there is a black economy, and we need to deal with the black economy. But basically, he's saying colonisation is to blame for illegal migration. I mean,
it's a child's answer.
I mean, but again, people speak English for a number of different reasons. I don't think we colonised. I mean, I know we were involved in Afghanistan, but I don't think we colonised a lot of the country. And if we did, it was a very long time ago, and they largely don't speak English, other than they see British films.
Yeah.
And they see American films, listen to British music.
Yeah, this default stock answer, which is that colonialism is the root cause of every sort of evil, it is a child's answer. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of what colonialism is, and ultimately also how modern economics works. These people, given that we're told that it was a unique evil, these people would not be flocking to the UK if it was a unique evil.
This is the most bizarre thing, isn't it? That Britain did these terrible, unspeakable things. I mean, no one's saying everything was perfect. By the way, these countries weren't living. It's like America, when they have the native Indians, or whatever, indigenous America,
the Aztecs.
whatever we're calling them before, and the Aztecs, South
What
America.
a great society.
Let's all stop pretending that everyone was living in perfect, wonderful. I mean, Garden of Eden, all these countries before we're out. Are you kidding me? Life was nasty, brutish, and short for everybody at that time. It's absolutely fascinating that British culture and language has maintained in so many of these countries. Countries not just choosing to stay in the Commonwealth, there are other countries in Africa and in Asia who apply to join the Commonwealth, by the way, because they've never even been colonised by us. A lot of the countries that were colonised by us are actually some of the booming economies, taking actually a lot of the advantages that, infrastructure and bureaucracy. I know some bureaucracy has been quite good, and rule of law, parliament, democracy. I mean, if as bad as the corruption is in countries like India and Nigeria and Pakistan and others, you know what? There is a semblance of something there, which is not there in a lot of other countries. But it's just bizarre. Blame it for everything. And yet all these people from all these countries, for some reason, want to come to Britain, despite us being the most evil people on the planet, as you say.
That's the thing. And people also, they have to remember why it is that the British Empire was the biggest and was the most successful, because it had institutions that, as you say, were not corrupt, unlike other European empires, which also, those existed as well. I might want to remind people. But ours outlasted those because it was bigger, it was better. And one of the key things about this, of course, is it was dominated by capitalism, by global capitalism, which led to growth, which led to prosperity, which was how it was able to outlast its competitors, keep on expanding as it did. Why it is then that we have to take the legacy of all of this is, well, we want the exact opposite of that. We want to say goodbye to all the prosperity and growth. What we want is socialism, whilst inviting the world's poor, when in fact we raised the world's poor up once upon a time through capitalism. It's the thing that just, it infuriates you, because you can see in slow motion what is going to happen, what is happening, and you know the solution, but you know it's not going to happen.
Absolutely. And then you've got, your likes of your Zach Polanski's and others calling for media regulation in the wake of Jason Arde because of all the lies. Sorry, but I still appreciate the larger breast, Jack. I mean...
Me too.
Of all the people, I mean, and again, wanting us to not have, God forbid we should have too much focus on anything, any wrongdoing or any things that people actually say, particularly Green Party members who are chatting about killing Zionists. Hi, am I on your list? In a leaked WhatsApp set of group messages. I mean, seriously, these people thinking that the death of Jason Arde is an excuse for media regulation to basically censor what people can say. I'm sorry, the only reason we even know about this man is because of a free media, and I'm sorry, but that's just the media doing its job. But it's also the media doing its job, by the way, when they expose things like, oh, you wouldn't like that, would you? The £5 million donation to Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
Media work. We have a plural media that follows lots of different subjects, and they expose things that we need to know about. They didn't do their job during lockdown, fair point, but, you know, it is extraordinary how many people who think that they are progressive and liberal and on the left are actually, when you dig a little bit deeper, I mean, just pure totalitarian, authoritarian.
Yeah.
And people who calling some of the things they call for, frankly, I mean, the actual word fascist is accurate. Very brief response.
The amazing thing is who they're turning on today, which is The Guardian. The Guardian of all newspapers they're decrying as some sort of racist bastion of oppression because it dared to ask the questions about what this man was lying about. That's how insane it is.
Exactly. 10:27 time. Get to your calls up next. Anything and everything we're talking about, including, of course, what Sam Rushworth, that Labour MP, had to say. Colonisation is to blame for us getting a load of illegal migrants. It's all our fault. I mean, it usually is. What else are we to blame for? Tell me all the things that we're to blame for in this world. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. That weather's my fault, by the way. It's my fault because I'm a climate denier. It's all my fault. I want to hear your calls. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
It is therefore my honour to declare that the duly elected leader of the Labour Party is Andy Burnham.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. I believe in all of you, and I am confident we can do it. Thank you very much. I have just come from Buckingham Palace, where I have accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. 10:30 is the time. This is Talk. Time for a quick call, a couple of messages before we go to my next guest. Andrew's in Hertfordshire. Andrew, what do you make of Number 10 North? They're going to be in charge of basically growth in this country. Everything's going to be fine. Are you feeling optimistic?
It's just like Burnham is standing over a child with a runny boiled egg, demanding that they eat it. They're demanding that we believe that taking things to the north will make everything better. If you want growth, reverse the national insurance ride, cut energy costs for business, and what you need to do to drive growth is put money in people's pockets, reverse the tax freezes. It's not difficult. You don't need to go to the north. And you sat down this morning and put a team together for today's show. If you did that in an office, perhaps, if you moved that office to Pret down the road, it'd be a disaster. And all he's doing is nothing. And because he does, at the root cause of it, he doesn't have a plan.
No, I don't think he understands economics. He's got a top English degree from Cambridge. Well, I'm not quite sure we value Cambridge degrees anymore, do we? Now we know. But I mean, but you know, he's a clever man. He just doesn't know about anything about economics, as far as I can tell. Or running a
Yeah,
business.
but you said something there we've got to be careful of, very careful. Remember, in the world of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
He might be better than others.
Is he really clever, or are we just painting him as clever?
No, I think no. I don't think you can get from a comp into Cambridge and get a top degree in a subject like English without being. I think he's clever, but I'm just not sure. And I think, look, he's clever enough to make it to be Prime Minister. You have to be quite clever to be able to do that. It's just whether or not that cleverness. Look, there's lots of things that I claim to know about. There's lots of things I don't know about. Do you know what I do when I don't know about something? I find somebody who knows about it. I've written a book about it, and I look up all the different viewpoints on it and all the evidence. I'm only old-fashioned like that. What I don't do is I think, oh, don't know anything about economics or growth. I know what. I think if we move it to the north, that'll make it work. I find that bizarre. I think if you're a clever person, you seek out people who know more about things than you.
That's right. So you find the person that knows more and you immediately move them 200 miles away from where all the people are that could drive the growth. Brilliant plan.
There is that, and people have to accept, living all around the country, that most of the growth is being driven in the south. I would like it not to be that case, because I think we need to, especially transport links and things, we do actually have, we can enable more growth in the north, coming from those people not having to go, I want to do this, I want to have this career, I need to move to London to do it. I think it would be a really good thing if that wasn't the case. But I don't think this is the answer, given that he's just taking up staff from London, paying them a bonus to move. I mean, for goodness sake. Andrew, thank you. Always good to talk to you, mate. Jack is in London. Oh, very southern calls today. Jack, what do you want to say?
Yeah. Well, basically, the pull factor is the people coming here because they want benefits and stuff. But the other pull factor is that they actually appreciate this country, what we do and how we do it. And we actually just need to be a little bit more, I would use the word patriotic, but actually just proud of the things that the country does well. And it irritates me when we have people that want to put us down left, right and centre for not small things, but actually things that actually don't actually have any relevance today.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's lots of things that don't work here, and we can see the sort of, the country's decline. But we are still, I say this all the time, we are still a great country. Most people don't realise how much a better country we are to live in. OK, other than the weather today.
All around the world, people speak English, or watch American programs probably, but the English language, I mean, the French must be doing their nut, because it used to be French when I was growing up at school. What did you think?
They actually have a government ministry which is entirely devoted to maintaining the French language.
I would do that if I was French. I'd feel the same way. But anyway, it is the way it is, and we've done a lot of good things in the world, and we do a lot of good things now. And with regards to Burnham and Manchester and London, geographically, London's the central hub for trade. The Thames was serving London, it served the country. It just happens to be that it's in the south. And the other thing that I think...
I'm going to throw in here. Sorry, I'm going to have to. I'm married to a bloke from Stoke. He would point out there was a point, actually, when Stoke-on-Trent was effectively the centre of Britain's economy and industry.
Okay. All right. So
I feel the need to do that so I don't get shouted at when I get home tonight.
But one of the things that Andy Burnham might be missing, and it disappoints me because there are a lot of good Labour people who I don't agree with, but they're good people, but they're missing out on the aspirational working class, which I was one of. I was a Thatcherite. I voted Thatcher when everyone else was voting Labour in my age group, and I was different. But I wanted more, and aspirational working class people are actually the future. These 100%. Are the people that are going to build growth. And we're missing out on that somewhere. Couldn't
agree with you more. Jack, thank you. Great call. 10:35 is the time. Take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Baroness Kate Hoey. Also going to be talking in this half hour to Lord Bird, who started, of course, the founder of the Big Issue for homeless people, about Andy Burnham's rough sleeping plan. Does he think it'll work? This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. Now.
10:37 is the time. This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Baroness Kate Hoey joins us now. She's an independent peer, of course, and a former Labour MP. A very good morning to you. Good morning,
Julia.
Lovely to see you as always. Can I ask you about? I mean, you know, you're a somewhat Northern Ireland, but you know, you represented a southern constituency when you were an MP. What do you make of Andy Burnham's move to say that, well, it's no longer going to be the Treasury that's going to be driving growth in this country? In charge of driving growth is now going to be Number 10 North. Because my first thought on this was, when was the Treasury driving growth in South anyway? But do you think moving it to the North is going to make a difference to anything?
Well, I think that this is a very, this is a very personal kind of thing from Andy Burnham, because he's came in as the mayor of Manchester. He came in about all the things that he's achieved up there, and he thinks that by sort of projecting that onto being, having a Downing Street North is all going to change things. I mean, I think it's a huge waste of money, frankly, right from the beginning. That's not to say that I don't think there should be a lot more effort and investment in the north of England and the Midlands and parts of England. But that's very different from deciding that you're going to move your whole kind of government and that you're going to spend a day or a couple of days a week and your ministers are all going up. I mean, the cost of all of this, when it's analysed in about 6 months' time, will be huge. Yep. And you know, I think you had a caller on there, I think it was Jack earlier, who said absolutely everything I agreed with about just, you know, if you want investment, you've got to actually, you know, start to put more money into people's pockets. You've got to do all those things that everybody with common sense seems to think should happen.
Well, why do so many on your
Treasury,
former Labour benches not get it?
Well, especially as so many of them, you know, are representing these kinds of seats that have people who want to get on, who want to see good things happening to their children, who understand small businesses. It really does. You know, I just do not understand. There are so many Labour MPs who should be out there arguing and shouting for more investment in their area, but you're seeing it in a way that actually helps ordinary people get on in life, and they just don't want to do it. And you know, it's why Labour has lost so much support. And I don't see, no matter how good Andy Burnham is at projecting himself and how good a personality he has, I can't see that changing.
No, I mean, I really can't. I'm fascinated by all the talk there's going to be a 2027 general election. I'll never say never, because no one can predict. We can't predict what's happening next week, let alone what's happening in a year's time or a few years' time. But I just find it extraordinary, because I just don't see this Burnham bounce. I mean, a lot of it is just the thank God he's not Starmer bounce and the problems that Reform have been having. But, you know, we've seen Kemi Badenoch is, you know, on the bounce as well and dragging up behind her the Tory vote from people who are still angry at what the Tories did in power for so many years. But as soon as they have a budget, they're either going to show they're not going to do anything and our economy will still stagnate, or they're actually going to do stuff that's actually going to cost an absolute fortune, or maybe they'll probably manage both. And we haven't even had the hit from the Iran crisis yet on our energy, really on our energy bills and our costs. I mean, the economy is going to be even more of a disaster in 6 months' time.
Well, I think they're also going to spend a huge amount of money on this sort of whole devolution thing, mayors everywhere, all of that kind of idea that, you know, by putting in a mayor, by actually getting so-called devolution, that's actually going to change things. It's just adding bureaucracy, adding quangos, adding...
And voters don't want it. But the votes...
No, they don't want it.
The votes in local, even like the local Manchester election, wasn't it about under 25% of people even bothered voting?
Well, I think, you know, what people want is to see their local things like bins being collected and the local potholes fixed and all of those sorts of things done locally. And then we're a small enough country to not actually have this whole idea. I mean, I personally, it's too late to go back, but I find devolution, the whole area, you know, that now anything that's happening is usually said, well, this will be happening in England. And then Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland have to sort of decide, are we going to do this too? How much money are we going to get to do it? And the whole thing becomes, you know, we are disuniting the United Kingdom.
No, that's absolutely true. That said, I believe in self-determination. The same reason I voted for Brexit. People want to be, have more devolved power. Fine, do so, but then don't moan when things are different.
They don't get but they don't vote for it. They don't get it. They don't get a chance to vote for it.
No, that is a fair point, isn't it? Let me also ask you about the latest the migrant news. I mean, quite absurd. French politician representing sort of the Calais area, demanding that Brits hand over even more cash to tackle migrants. He's branded the UK a permanent attraction, which is true. Got the Lib Dem leader, Ed Davey, neither Liberal nor a Democrat. We know that after he basically demanded to overturn the Brexit referendum. But which of course you were a big campaigner for, he's called for the UK to join the EU Migration Pact to tackle small boats. So the argument being you have to then apply for asylum in the first country that you arrive in the EU, and then they share out the number of people fairly. Of course, we know that would mean we would be taking God knows how many migrants from the EU hadn't even made it over here on boats. What do you make of those two stories?
Well, I mean, I don't even want to comment on Ed Davies' remarks because they're just so ridiculous. I mean, we have to stand up to the French. We have to be much tougher. We have to stop. I mean, the pull factor is huge, but even without the pull factor, there are going to be people who want to come across that bit of ocean and come to us. And I just think once again, we do a lot of talking about it, and Andy Burnham, every time he's interviewed, says, oh, yes, but there's fewer boats coming. There may be fewer boats coming, but they're actually bigger boats and they're holding just as many people. And so I think the money we're giving to France is unbelievably big for what they're doing for us. I don't see that they have made any real difference. I don't have the evidence. No. And of course, the government will say that they have stopped but everybody who goes out there, including, both reform people and Tory leaders like Chris Philip went out and they filmed what was happening. And the reality is that the French aren't taking it seriously. They're delighted to get rid of every single boatload. That's one less for them to think about. Yeah. And, all these people have come up through all those other safe countries. And we have to stop treating them when they arrive with kid gloves. I mean, I don't mean treat them badly, but we have to stop treating them as if they are suddenly British citizens who need all this help and support. They have to be shown that they're not coming here. If they're coming here illegally, we are going to find a way of very quickly deporting them. And Absolutely. That's just what government doesn't seem to want to do.
No, it's utterly bizarre. Again, where there's a will, there is a way. Labour MP Sam Rushworth was on JK's show on breakfast, apologies, and he was asked, about the problems with migration. He said, I think there are two big pull factors. One is that they speak the English language. He says, because we spent a couple of centuries going around the world colonising it and teaching everyone our language. He said the other is that there is a black economy. We need to deal with the black economy. I mean, working, you don't need an ID card yet, but again, people are still supposed to check these things. We don't enforce the rules on our economy. But do you think the reason why we're having all these people turning up on our shores is because we were colonisers?
I mean, that's just part of this general move at the moment, thing on our history, and blame it all on colonialism and imperialism and slavery, and it's all our fault. It's ridiculous, and the average person knows that that's not the reason why people are coming. Yes, of course, we have links with the Commonwealth countries, but a lot of the main numbers of migrants illegally who are coming are not coming from Commonwealth countries that did have British involvement over the years. Exactly. It's a much more deeply, basically people, many of them, most of them are coming because they do think they're going to get a better life. And, I understand that, but not in it. What I don't understand is they all come here and they all leave their families behind. Yeah. And yet we still consider them as asylum seekers first and foremost. They're not asylum seekers. There may be the odd person who has suffered in their country, but the vast majority of them have left their homes, left their wives, left their children, and to get some more. Yeah.
Imagine being the person going, this country's terrible and dangerous and awful, and we can't have a future here. And I'm just going to head off. Might see you in a few years, might not. Yeah. I mean, and leaving. I mean, that tells you everything, doesn't it? Just finally, I know you're a former Labour MP, but I know you've got a lot of links in lots of different parties. What on earth is going on in Reform right now? Because we've had Tim Montgomery, who's basically a rank and file member, but a former very prominent Conservative. He started Conservative Home, which was, of course, the website for basically grassroots Tory members, very influential. He defected, a pretty high-profile defector to Reform some while back. He was apparently instrumental in bringing over people like Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick. He's been suspended from the party after, we are told, constantly publicly criticising not just Zia Youssef, a very senior figure in the party, but also criticising Nigel Farage, £5 million loan, and others, saying, look, Nigel Farage has always said, public criticism, if you've got criticism, keep it behind closed doors. What do you make of that basic decision to suspend him from the party?
Well, I think obviously Tim Montgomery is well known amongst media circles and amongst journalists, and he was a very good writer. I don't think he's a sort of national figure that sort of people will be waking up in Makerfield and saying, "Oh my goodness, we've lost him." I do think it's a pity that if he had serious complaints and concerns, and I'm sure there are lots of people in Reform who do, that he didn't actually. Maybe he did. Maybe behind the scenes he did actually talk about this and try and get some changes, because I've got criticisms of Reform too, but I mean, I wouldn't feel it was my job at the moment to go on television and talk about it. And he went on Newsnight last night, so I'm not criticising him personally. I just feel that it's sad for Reform members to see this happening, just when the media is so intent on actually attacking Nigel Farage, every single thing. I mean, it was something ridiculous yesterday in the Times about that he had no humour, he had no this, he'd know that. It was just ridiculous. And so I'm disappointed in a way, and I can understand it, because I would have my problems probably with Zia, but you should try and do it first behind closed doors.
You think that then, yeah. But that said, again, a lot of organisations wouldn't allow it either, would they? I'm a big fan of Tim Montgomery's, but yeah, I can also see the other side. Baroness Kate Howitt, great to talk to you. I really appreciate you joining us. Former Labour MP, independent peer. Been an expense listening to all of that. Yeah. What do you make of that row? I mean, there's so many rows going on in Reform at the moment. Yeah,
I mean, I like Tim. I've known him a while, but the thing is, where Reform currently are, they've had a wobbly summer. There needs to be discipline. You can't be just allowing there to be constant briefing against each other, which feeds into the idea that the party is not united. It may well not be united. There are many criticisms that can be made, but you can't add fuel to the fire by undermining your own people.
That's kind of where I am on that as well. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Give us a call 0244 499 1000. Up next, going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to the founder of the big issue, Lord Bird, to find out what he makes of Andy Burnham's rough sleeping plan. Will it end rough sleeping? This is Talk.
It is therefore my honour to declare that the duly elected leader of the Labour Party is Andy Burnham.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. I believe in all of you, and I am confident we can do it. Thank you very much. I have just come from Buckingham Palace, where I have accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 10:51 is the time. Well, today Andy Burnham and alongside him his Housing Secretary Angela Rayner announcing their plan to tackle homelessness. If you remember, as he arrived at number 10 on his very first day in the job, the Prime Minister did say that abolishing homelessness, abolishing rough sleeping was going to be his first task. Can he abolish it? And is what he's planning going to do the job? Let's talk to Lord Bird, John Bird, founder of The Big Issue and now Peer of the Realm. Very, very good morning to you, Lord Bird.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Well, from what we've heard so far about basically everyone in England, for which he's responsible, other powers involved in other parts of the country, everyone is going to be offered somewhere to live, a bed, not just in a hostel, but some sort of accommodation. Does that, of itself, solve the rough sleeping issue, Lord Bird?
No, it doesn't. I think the more interesting thing is what he's saying about homeless first, which is where you take people in and you give them all sorts of support, which the Big Issue has been trying to do for many decades. So you begin to take the reason why they end up on the streets out of them, rather than just look upon it as an accommodation issue.
Yeah, a lot of people see it as they haven't got a home. The solution is to give them a home, which seems very obvious and moral and a good thing to want to do. But often it is the other issues, mental health issues, alcoholism, drug addiction, other issues that have forced them away from homes or forced them to lose their homes. So giving them a home often can just start the cycle again, can't it?
Exactly. The Big Issue was absolutely dumb in the early days when we raised a sizable amount of money and went in with a housing association who convinced us that if we raised £250,000, they would house 20 Big Issue vendors.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, because they didn't give the support that they said they were back on the streets.
Yeah.
So we know from personal experience that just giving somebody a home, looking upon homelessness as something simply to do with I just haven't got a home.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the people I work with and the people I come from, 90% of us have inherited poverty.
Yes.
So we're coming from behind, and many of us never catch up. And that's the way I would like everybody to look upon them.
Yeah.
This is an age-old problem.
And again, a lot of people who might not know that you yourself had been homeless. That's how you understand this problem as well. But we see, I mean, that we have a lot of veterans, people who've getting post-traumatic stress disorder, distress, marriage breaks up when they come home, lose the kids, out on the streets, the alcohol, the mental health problems. We know a lot of young people fleeing violence, sexual abuse, neglect in their homes, fleeing care where they've been abused. And then, of course, very, very vulnerable on the streets. People sleeping rough in this horrible heat we've had, people sleeping, I mean, certainly in my area, I see it routinely. People turning to drink and drugs because, frankly, it seems like the rational thing to do in those dire circumstances. What sort of help can people get? Because I've spoken to homeless people who've said, but they don't want to go into a hostel because they think hostels are unsafe and they can't take, for instance, their dog or something like that, or they have to be there by a certain time. So what would work other than we're going to put you in a bedsit somewhere and just hope that you don't, mess it up so much and get complaints from the neighbours and have too much drug taking there that you're going to get kicked out by the landlord, which is, frankly, what happens in a lot of cases.
Well, you're dead right. And I think the real, you see, what I find so interesting about the Andy Burnham promise is that we're talking about homelessness in July and August.
Yeah.
Now, I don't remember ever talking about homelessness seriously, except in the month of November and December.
When people feel guilty stepping over people when it's cold. That's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. So what it is, it's it's conscience money. And when you're doing it in July and August, because he announced this in August, what he's actually saying, we're going to bring in housing first throughout the country, and we're going to do a systematic process of treating a person as though they are sick and ill and they need our help. And therefore, that to me is good news. If he manages to do it, it's going to be incredibly expensive. The problem is that we're already spending an enormous amount of money on homelessness, homelessness in the streets, homelessness in the NHS, homelessness in prison, and homelessness in the mental health area. So we're spending a vast amount.
The human cost is huge, but the economic cost as well is huge. But here's the issue: we've got a shortage of, cheap, vaguely decent social housing, affordable housing for people who haven't already slipped through that net. We know there are long waiting lists for mental health treatment therapy, long waiting lists for any alcohol or drug treatment centres, long waiting lists for all of these things. But these things are suddenly going to miraculously be made available in a timely fashion to people who've been rough sleeping. Now, does that mean that's huge extra resources out of nowhere that are going to be provided for these people individually, or is that going to be taken from other people who haven't yet fallen through the net? Have you managed to make head or tail of where those resources are coming from?
Well, it's interesting. Somebody asked me, some member of the public, they said, if you were Andy Burnham, what would be the first thing that you would sort out in the UK? And I was thinking of what would be the popular consensus, not the political consensus, because I don't think the public are as concerned about rough sleeping as they are about potholes. So I was saying, well, why doesn't he sort out the potholes and send a message to people? We're actually going to improve the quality of life in the United Kingdom. And
but
so
potholes don't matter as much as people. I mean, you can't be saying that.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I'm saying, what message do you need to send to Britain today? And the message is, we're going to sort things out. We're not going to leave the public domain to fall to pieces. We'll get around to homelessness. But what we've got to do is the average electorate has to feel, this is a different regime.
They're on my side.
Climate.
Yeah, that's a very good. Except I think that dealing with rough sleeping, and again, they're not dealing with homelessness, they're not going to be dealing with all the people who are sofa surfing at the moment, but rough sleeping is an expensive thing to deal with, but a hell of a lot less expensive than the tens and tens of billions of pounds needed to repair those potholes. Lord Bird, really appreciate you joining us. As this policy develops, I'd love to get your thoughts back again on that. Lord Bird, founder of The Big Issue. Benedict Spence, your thoughts?
I mean, it was funny, actually, you were sort of talking about, people not being as important as potholes, but it all adds up, doesn't it?
The other way around.
Sorry, good Lord. Yes, no, OK, row back. But it all adds up. It all kind of comes as part of painting a picture of general decline. It shouldn't be one or the other. You should be in a position where your state can actually solve both of these things, and it's all downstream of the structural
the potholes,
issues.
Cycling the street, the litter,
creating
beggars,
the wealth
people rough sleeping.
To fix these things.
People,
that's where it's downstream.
It's just a general lawlessness and a sense of decline,
have to choose.
and an acceptance of decline.
Yes, exactly.
That this is how we live now, and it's not how people want to live now. Look, I'm all in favour of people wanting to do these things. I think it's a moral cause, absolutely. But I don't think it can be done with just sort of saying nice words, like most of the things that Andy Burnham does. And again, I'm sort of surprised he didn't have something to do with putting homeless people on buses, because he's got his bus fetish. So much more we're going to talk about. I want to hear your thoughts and everything. Give us a call. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's fast approaching 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk, we're the home of common sense. You knew that already. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, watching on YouTube, any of the other myriad ways that his newfangled world with the tinterweb, as my father would call it, doing the Google, you can find us. It's great to have you on board. I still, to this day in my family, why don't you do the Google?
The Google.
Do the Google. To this day, that's what we all say in our family, just because it still makes us laugh about 10 years on. Do the Google, find us on YouTube.
Little window into your family life, the Google.
Do the Google.
Sounds like a really bad dance
thing, by
from
the way,
40s.
It'll never take off, just in case you... Oh, the long Christmas days fly by. Anyway, I feel the show's already disintegrated. Go to my YouTube page. That's the thing as well. At the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing.
On the YouTube.
On the
YouTube.
On the YouTube. On this newfangled thing. It'll never catch on. Look, we're discussing inflation. In this hour, it's rising to 2.9%. I mean, we kind of don't pay much attention because remember when it was 11%?
Yeah.
I remember saying they're going, inflation has risen to 11.1%. But it's up from 2.6% the month before. What's it being driven by altogether now? Energy prices. Why are energy prices high? Because of the Iran war. Why are they hitting us far more than any other country? Because of net zero policies. Is everyone clear? We've got the ridiculous situation. The Tories have showed us that actually we're looking at £540 extra for each family in this country a year because of net zero policies and our costs. 540 quid. I'm sorry. That's quite a nice holiday, actually. You can actually do flights. You could get a cheapy deal, get flights, cheapy little apartment, you know, OK, kids are in bunk beds, they'll cope. But you can actually manage a cheapy holiday for that money. So I'm sorry, you know, for the four of you. You know, that's a lot of money that families would like to have. Going to talk about number 10 North taking over responsibility for economic growth from the Treasury as part of what Andy Burnham calls a huge transfer of power out of Whitehall. It's a huge transfer of our money out of Whitehall, taking trains up to stay in nice hotels while they do the work in number 10 North because it looks better and Andy Burnham gets to spend more time with his wife and kids. And that's great for him. I'm not entirely sure that's how we should run the country. I'm not entirely sure when the Treasury was actually in any way responsible for economic growth, because if they have been responsible for it, they've not done a very good job. We're also going to be talking about Donald Trump declaring the Strait of Hormuz a new US territory and has axed all talks with Iran. I mean, it's probably right to axe all talks with Iran because, funnily enough, I don't think you can trust a completely theocratic, complete bunch of lunatics who are intent on killing basically the entire West. But also we're going to be talking about whether or not there should be democratic elections in Ukraine, even though the Constitution forbids it during wartime. But sacked senior minister for the Ukrainian government has demanded there should be elections soon. Which many people think Zelensky would not win. We'll talk about all of that. Delighted to say that joining me for all the chat today, and I know he's got to have interesting thoughts on all that, is Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. Morning to you.
Good morning.
We won't say what JK said off air about your suit. I like your suit today.
Thank you.
We mostly don't talk about the men's clothes, other than Benedict Spence. Ever since many years ago, we started off with the Movember tash.
Yes.
And from then it's become something of an obsession.
I like to become a talking point for you and the show to revolve around me.
It's what all my listeners and my watchers, that's all they talk. The listeners are lucky. They don't have to see it.
You know, November's coming up. It's not far away.
Oh, God.
It's getting closer.
Oh, God.
Yeah, the weather is starting to turn. It's getting greyer. It's going to be
It's
here.
August, for God's sake, man. People on the summer holes.
It's like when they start putting out the Christmas decorations early, you know, 4 months before. I'm starting to warn everybody that the moustache will be back.
September, they start, it really upsets me.
Shall I start growing it in September? 2 months early, like a really small one.
Dread to think, because by the end of November, it's huge.
I know.
I was thinking, honestly, I was going to buy a new broom for the garden, and then I thought, no, I'll just borrow Benedict's
turn me
tash in
upside
November.
down and just sort of run me across the floor.
Don't tell me that hasn't happened at your public school.
I mean,
Is that the sort of thing you public school boys do?
Yeah, well, it is the sort of thing that you'd end up doing, but, you know, how big do you think my moustache was at school? Quite large, but it doesn't matter.
Right, I want to hear your thoughts on all the topics we're talking about. It's number 10 nonsense and in charge of November. Is that, where am I?
Here we are.
In charge of moustaches. Number 10 Norm's going to be in charge of Benedict's moustache. He's going to be in charge of economic growth. They may as well. You know what? You put Andy Burnham in charge of your moustache, it probably wouldn't grow.
I was going to say, that would be the only thing that would grow, but he'd find a way of ruining it somehow.
He'd put it on a bus, but on a really cheap fare. What's your reaction to that? Your thoughts also on, I mean, the French politician demanded that Brits hand over even more cash to tackle migrants, branding the UK a permanent attraction. Lib Dem leader Ed Davey calling for the UK to join the EU Migration Pact to tackle small boats, which means you have to claim asylum in the first country people arrive in. But then, doesn't matter where you go, you get shared out among all the EU countries or European countries like us who would take part. So we, being a very large country, big population, we'd have loads and loads more. I mean, what a brilliant idea. Anything to drag us back into the unelected, unaccountable EU. Ed Davey? I would love Ed Davey to come on the show. He used to come on the show many years ago. I think he thinks I'm a bad person because I voted for Brexit.
Oh, dear.
Oh, one of those awful
dear.
people. Doesn't like a lot of the country. But also the Labour MP, Sam Rushworth, who was on JK's breakfast show this morning, he was asked about, you know, the pull. What is the attraction of Britain? And he said... he said there are two big pull factors. One is that they speak the English language. He said, you know, because we spent a couple of centuries going around the world colonising it and teaching everyone our language. And then he said the other is that there's a black economy. We need to deal with the black economy. Well, I mean, all we need to do is actually start enforcing the laws we've got. You know, you have to show you're allowed to legally work, and you can't pay people money and not have it, you know, off the books. But I mean, is the reason why we are being inundated with illegal migrants because we colonised the world, Benedict?
Yes, and frankly, they were very upset when we stopped, and so that's why they're coming back over here saying, where have you gone? Keep on colonising us.
We should rebuild our empire.
Absolutely. That's what the lesson...
We found a solution.
The lesson that we need to take from all of this is that they want more empire, not less.
I hate to tell you, a lot of the countries that we colonised would be in a better shape. Even though the people who run our country are all rubbish, we still do a better job than a lot of those other countries do.
Yes, we built the railways and they worked, and now they don't. And that's sort of the... I mean,
here as well, or...?
Oh, yeah, well, that's the great irony of the situation. They all come here and they go, but we've heard such great stories about how everything works. And we're just like, well, we don't know who told you that. But things have long since stopped working here as well. We're all on the same boat. No, I mean, listen, it's...
a very big mega dinghy.
Yeah, very, very large inflatable is what we've got, that we've bought from a Turkish man. But this is the thing. It's the child's response, which is to say that Britain is uniquely evil rather than, in fact, being uniquely rather good amongst global empires in terms of, I don't know, ending slavery, lifting people out of poverty.
Did we end slavery? I thought we were the only perpetrators of slavery.
Only ones.
I have not
kept up
with this
news. We're still doing it. We're still huge slavers. We're awful, awful people, and that's why we owe many people today reparations.
Trillions.
Lots and lots. Trillions, I think, is a bit of an underestimate. Frankly, I don't really think the number's been dreamt up yet. We'll get there eventually, in about 400 years' time. But still, this is the thing. Ultimately, now, everything has been done through this prism, where you can blame it on the evils of men who died 150, 200 years ago, and it is all used as justification now for pushing socialist policies. These things are completely unrelated, but in that warped worldview, you can use it to justify absolutely anything. It's not just here. We see it in a really hysterical way. They do it in the United States as well. Absolutely everything is the evil doings of the white man, and that's why what you need is huge transfers of wealth from one to the other, rather than create the wealth in the first place, which is what lifts people out of the poverty.
This is one of my arguments. And again, the crucial thing that has lifted people out of poverty, and again, it is fascinating. We see what's going on with American Democrat politics and what has been going with Green politics here in the UK, and also with, you know, the left wing of the Labour Party here as well, and a lot of the Lib Dems, frankly. Quite a lot of Tories, it would appear, is this bizarre idea that capitalism somehow has made poor people poorer. Capitalism has delivered the greatest wealth that the world has ever known. It has dragged more people out of poverty, not just in this country, but around the world. In the poorest countries in the world, capitalism is the route out, has been the route out. It has fed more people. It has given people more freedoms. It has freed more women from subjugation. It's given more... It's been better for the environment. Things people don't understand. Actually, the richer the country is, the better you're able to look after the environment. It has been the great industrial revolution, capitalism, democracy, where that has happened. And again, bearing in mind the majority of countries in this world are still not democracies, but most of them have taken on some semblance of capitalism.
Yeah.
And the market is what it's delivered. And it is astonishing to me how many people who claim to be clever still think that socialism is in any way a way of delivering wealth. There has never been, well, they've clearly never been to a socialist country. There has never been a socialist country that has delivered wealth. And when people say, well, China's very wealthy, the only reason large parts of China, not all of China, is wealthy is because they've taken on capitalism.
Yeah. Capitalism with Chinese characteristics. Yeah, they
with
did. Yeah.
Totalitarian, authoritarian rule.
They were absolutely delighted to be able to welcome in the businesses of the world to come and build their stuff there, and it's made a lot of Chinese people phenomenally wealthy. It's not a communist country at all. But you know, you've got the strange disconnect with a lot of people on the left. On the one hand, they say tax the billionaires, tax the 1%, because they seem to believe that there is a finite amount of wealth and it's all being hoarded somewhere.
And they're all evil.
At the same time, those same people have no problem with borrowing infinite amounts of money and printing infinite amounts of money. So which is it? Is it a finite pool, or can you create it from elsewhere? And when you get this sort of imperfect marriage of the two, you get the disastrous economic situation that we have, which is people being taxed to the point where they can't create anything, but also being asked to pay for the interest of all of this borrowing.
But again, also, we talked about a lot on the show yesterday about, you know, we talked about, and the day before, about reform and their talk about people on welfare benefits and like 300,000 more. Sorry, apologies. No, was it 700,000 more people on universal credit?
Yeah.
I mean, mind-boggling number more people.
About 8 million in total.
More than 8 million people on some version of universal credit. People go, well, it's an in-work benefit. Vast majority of people don't stay working, and if they do work, it's household of 2 parents, and one of them works part-time. Oh, and we're all surprised you can't pay your bills on that.
Over a million of those are foreign-born as well. Yeah. And this is the road to economic ruin. I don't think people realise that.
Again, it's a welfare state for the world. Yeah. It's a national health service for the world. It's human rights for the world. Again, our country didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of particular, peculiar circumstances. I mean, Protestantism. There are lots of notions about individual responsibility, relationship with God. I'm an atheist.
It's not all perfect.
No, but there's lots of aspects of that aspect of our culture. It came out from working class movements to demand rights and to get the vote and to trade unions. A lot of amazing entrepreneurs. There's the Industrial Revolution. There's so many things that built this country, and so many people who sacrificed and who worked hard for us to be the country we are, and died in the Second World War for us to maintain those freedoms. And we should, I'm not harping back by that, that's absolutely crucial. It's so crucial to where we are and where Europe is right now. And yet we're just saying, no, but we're just lucky to be born here. Well, we are, but not the people who fought for it in the past. Yeah. But the idea that any one of the 7 billion people on the planet, at least 5.5, 6 billion of whom have a worse life than us, have a right to just come and share in what we've got, as opposed to, hey, why don't you stay in your country? Why don't you fight for economic freedom and political freedom in your country and make your country better for you and your fellow countrymen and women and children, and improve your country, rather than just sodding off and leaving, for instance, Afghanistan, and leaving women trapped in their homes.
There's a lot, there's also a lot of proof in the fact that our sort of enclaves are extensions of our own nation. The United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. You look at how those countries are doing. If you take the principles, those capitalistic, democratic principles,
very well indeed.
If you take those things and you rarefy them and you refine them, actually you can create even more. And it's tremendously frustrating, therefore, to see Britain being blamed in this way, when actually you look at our contribution to the world. Even if you take Britain away, the United States is effectively an outsource of one
People
strand
speak
of
English because of American films and American music and our music and TV.
And British,
but they only speak English because of us.
Because those were English people who took those philosophical principles, those economic principles and those religious principles and said, OK, let's rarefy that, let's refine that, and look how well it went.
We should always be, and I feel this about the Industrial Revolution in terms of all the other things. My view is genuinely, you're welcome, world. You're welcome. No, you don't have to thank us. You're welcome. But we really should be taking more of that attitude. So, allied to that, have a little existential conversation about the role of Britain in the world over the many centuries. Power shifting to number 10 North, that'll solve everything, right? Is it even worth having... I've got this as one of my lead topics. Is it even worth us bothering to have this conversation? It's soddingly, embarrassingly, humiliatingly, insultingly absurd that moving it to the north,
Yes.
Manchester, one city, is going to make a difference.
It's like the imperial court moving from the Forbidden City to the Summer Palace, as if that changes anything at all. No, it doesn't. It is entirely through convenience and optics. It makes it appear as if something is happening, even though we all know it will achieve no material change or benefit at all, other than to cost us a little bit more money, because we're moving the mechanism from government up and forth, backwards and forwards across the country. I mean, the most insane thing about this is, and we should be honest about this, Manchester is getting this special treatment because the Prime Minister lives there.
Yeah.
If he lived in Liverpool or he lived in Leeds, it would be there. There is, in fact, if you wanted to do this kind of version of devolution, there is another place even further north from Manchester that has its own capital city, that already has the infrastructure of government, and that sometimes talks about not getting enough from Westminster and maybe leaving the Union. I don't know, maybe take some of the functions of government to Edinburgh, where it's already set up. But no, of course not, because that's not how Andy Burnham thinks. Why? Because he doesn't live there. That's literally what it is. There is another national capital further north, and that's because he doesn't live there. Yeah. It's so short-sighted.
I've got it. Wouldn't be my solution. I think we are a very highly centralised nation, but again, there are very good reasons for that in the past. I don't think that whether the office that's making decisions is sitting in Manchester or sitting in London makes any sodding difference to whether or not you're going to have the sense to do a proper train line, for Leeds. I think it's insulting. I really do. Look, I'd want to hear your thoughts. This and everything we're talking about. 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. I have to say this bit. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1, standard network rate message. Let's also talk about Zach Polanski. He's in the news a lot. I like messaging Zach Polanski. I follow all the leaders of parties, and I'm always just absolutely fascinated by. I mean, he just pumps out absolute mind-boggling, absurd drivel.
Does he reply when you message him?
He has on occasion. Won't come on the show, though.
Ah, that's a shame.
Which tells you everything, doesn't it? He has been very much, really much pushing this whole nonsense, a line regarding Jason Arday and pushing the outrageous stuff, some of which that was said at the vigil by people who should know better. The president of Hobbiton College, Cambridge, Lord Simon Woolley. He's the man who started Operation Black Vote, which is something campaign I absolutely support. In terms of, it's very important that everyone votes. I don't want people to feel that they don't have a say in the society. Getting people out to vote and getting them engaged in voting from whatever background, absolutely a good thing. He's a man. He's a clever man. He knows what he's doing. And when he says that, Jason Arday was a victim of assassination, a victim of lynching. We know what lynching means. It means, mob racist violence, someone being hanged, being dragged behind a car to their death. We are talking, pulled limb from limb. I mean, we are talking about the most horrific, disgusting, racist mob violence. And he used that word lynching, and he chose to use that at a vigil for a man who had, we believe, taken his own life after being exposed as a liar and a fraud and a con man, who couldn't face the consequences of that. And, as much as I feel sorry for his family, has nothing to do with the media doing their job. But he tweeted yesterday, freedom of the press should never have been freedom to own and dominate the press. I mean, if you have freedom of press, someone's going to own it, right? Yeah. I mean, and push constant misinformation and lies, he added, in brackets. Media regulation now, he has said. Green members have also proposed a conference motion. We're entering party conference season soon, folks, beware.
Oh, good Lord.
Proposing a statutory press regulator with the power to police the consciences of journalists under sweeping controls on the media. Reporters would be given a conscience clause, allowing them to refuse assignments if the regulator determined they were unethical. The watchdog would set the applicable standards. Media companies would also be forced to sell assets under statutory thresholds for concentrated ownership with the option of forced divestment. Now, we already do actually have limitations on who can buy a newspaper that's up for sale. Remember, there was big issues about the Telegraph being up for sale and how many newspapers and different organisations. But he said media businesses would have to be ultimately owned exclusively by people domiciled in Britain. And people will be, individuals and companies prohibited from owning shares in national newspapers, national broadcasters and major foreign individuals and companies, regional groups. Now, we know what that's, will not have escaped your notice. We work for a Murdoch-owned company. But it is extraordinary. They're going after everybody. They've been going after The Guardian, for goodness sake, because they actually made one of the biggest exposés on Jason Arday, which was his claims that he'd been the victim of some horrific-sounding racist attacks. A hooded man with a knife, a severed pig's head sent to his parents' house. No evidence for any of this at all. Police deny any investigation, never happened.
Doesn't appear on the CCTV, which was, for the first time ever, was actually looked into.
No butcher sold the pig, said that he said had done. I mean, so it's just simply not true. But they're going for it. They want media regulation, but presumably one of the reasons they want media regulations for is the more media coverage there was of Zach Polanski when he got exposed, he was, suddenly he was the big I am, wasn't he? Yeah. Suddenly he collapsed in the polls. I mean, outrageously. Yeah. Because he was reported as saying what he actually said about things like the Golders Green killings. But also, I mean, quite by chance, we have seen a report in the Times, originally from The Spectator, Green Party activists claiming that British Jews were a weapon of Israel, described hostility towards Jews as understandable, and talked about killing Zionists in a private Green member WhatsApp group. Yeah. Greens Against Imperialism, it was set up. Now, it's not an official Green group. The party's refusing to comment, saying it's not an official Green group. I'm assuming this is exactly the sort of story that they don't want the media to be publishing.
Well, this is, and there's also there'll be the sort of the double standard thing. Let's say that it was a group of people who were members of Reform or Restore or the Tories or something like that, and it wasn't an official group, but they were found to be saying similar things. Can you imagine the fury and the demands for the condemnation? It's kind of weird. I'm sat here in a brown suit, and yet I'm arguing in favour of press freedom and saying that maybe this, this fascistic approach to information maybe isn't a good idea. And yet these people, the nice people, they say, no, we need it more now. But they're also the same people who are posting lists of journalists who are involved in the witch hunt, inverted commas, of Jason Arde, who...
And basically, journalists who, as either news reporters or as commentators like myself, have written articles about Jason Arde.
Yeah, somebody put out a list of journalists saying, if anybody's got any information on them, it would be very much appreciated, just doing some digging. And, of course, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, they're trying to say, give me some dirt so we can hound these people. Now,
Are they asking for dirt, or are they asking for addresses?
All sorts of things. Now, on the one hand, I think that that's terrible. On the other hand, there are some people on that list who I have some gossip about. So I'm in two minds about this. But nonetheless, it's obviously a disgraceful thing. It's a disgraceful thing that this is actually being perpetrated and that you have tens of thousands of people apparently in central London buying into this idea. The use of the word lynching I find just despicable. There is nobody, if he has committed suicide, nobody is responsible for it other than him and his decision to do it. The idea that you could then label a journalist doing their job of asking the question, is this true?
Bearing in mind that academics and journalists who wrote polite emails asking for information, a year ago, had the police called on them. Carter Rock, I don't know who can afford. I don't know who needs help paying for the cost of their family paying for their funeral if they can afford Carter Rock. We don't know yet who paid for the most expensive, most these are the
attack dogs.
The attack dog. I mean, these people are seriously good. To send a letter, basically leave off to just a journalist asking questions, doing his job, working. He wasn't even a tabloid journalist. He was working. Was at the time was it the educational supplement?
Times Higher Education.
Times Higher Education. He was literally his job to look into this.
Not one of the evil right-wing tabloids or anything like that.
But I just find I think this is all very, very dangerous, very, very scary. But we know there are a lot of people. We've got the Hacked Off group. We've got the Good Law Project. I mean, the complaints they've done to us, and that's been publicised in the papers about Ofcom and the GB News and others as well, and basically claiming things like, we're transphobic because we won't call men women and she and her. I mean, really such hateful things. Trying to complain about when we cover things like, the nonsense over climate change and complaining about net zero. I mean, but again, bear in mind, the YouTube page we have for this station was taken down by Google, remember, during lockdown, for interviews I did with scientists and professors and doctors about masks and viruses and things. I mean, the urges that people have to, and we've seen so much information that's come out in America and in Britain about the censorship of that. Guys, you'd still be in lockdown if it was up to a lot of these people. The urge to censor information, my view is always, censorship is always wrong. There are rules like sub judice during
that can influence
trials. Those I think are good things. Trials should be happening much sooner than they are, so with such a long period. People say, why are people not talking about Widdicombe? You're not allowed to talk about that case in any detail. There is a legal process ongoing. It's very important there is a fair process. But but this is the as a general rule, there is nothing that I won't talk about simply because I'm really happy to be challenged on my ideas and my views and my facts, my truth. And if the only people trying to shut down debate are people who, for instance, pushing things like climate change and why we should all have to have worse lives because of their mad popular hysteria, who won't debate because, oh, there's no debate, They won't even debate like top Nobel Prize-winning, professors on these issues because they say there's no debate, because they can't actually do it on the facts. People who argue that men can become women, they can't argue on the facts because they're making absurd claims. People who are claiming that, a man who was exposed as a liar and a fraud was somehow a victim, they don't want to debate. They don't want to debate. They just want to shout names and accuse people of killing him outrageously and of racism outrageously because they can't actually debate on the facts. The only people who don't want to have a free press and have, uncensored press, and also sometimes, yes, papers and organisations that are powerful enough to stand up to authority, to government, the only people who don't want that are the people who have something to hide.
Two things here, because it's interesting you mentioned Anne Widdecombe. That was not very long ago, and the same people who are furious about this and are politicising this were the same people who, when that happened, said you shouldn't be politicising the deaths of people. There is no awareness.
I quoted your tweet yesterday about that, yes.
Thank you. But I did think it was very striking. It was not that long ago that these same people were saying that it was the worst thing morally you could do to politicise somebody's death, and here they are doing that exact same thing. But what they are doing here is trying to create, a figure, a sort of a saint, a martyr out of Jason Arde, and they will use this for press regulation. What I think must happen, what I think will happen is all they will end up doing is making people on the other side double down on repeating what it is that led us to this point. What Jason Arde did, what he didn't do, what he said, what he didn't say, how it was that we got from A to B. All they are doing is just reinforcing the fact that his story, the real story, is going to be pushed more and more and more, and it is vital that journalists, media organisations do not allow themselves to be cowed, do not allow this to be the next stage in press censorship. If you sit back now because you think, oh, it's a bit grubby and people are a bit loud, they will come for you. They will be relentless. If someone
calls you a racist and a killer, and you are not a racist and not a killer, you should defend yourself using the facts.
Yes, you should be angry, you should be persistent, you should not lie down just because it might make things easier in the short term.
Absolutely. 11:28 is time. Love to hear your thoughts on anything and everything we're talking about, particularly this number 10 North nonsense. This is Talk.
It is therefore my honour to declare that the duly elected leader of the Labour Party is Andy Burnham.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. I believe in all of you, and I am confident we can do it. Thank you very much. I have just come from Buckingham Palace, where I have accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government. I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. We will be.
This man has no mandate whatsoever. He didn't stand on the 2024 general election manifesto.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 11:32. So let's get straight to your calls. Paul's on the line in Southampton. He's given us a buzz on 0344 499 1000. Hello, Paul. What do you want to talk about?
Hello, Julia.
Hello.
Yeah, it's you were talking about number 10 North and the ridiculous expense.
Yeah.
The equivalent has got to be the European Parliament when it moves it between France and Belgium, and that costs what, $500 million?
Oh, I mean, silly amount. They literally pack everything up onto the train and move. I mean, it's genuinely insane.
Yeah, and that's just for French ego, and they want some money. And I mean, I still don't understand. I mean, Burnham's not done anything. He said a lot, but he's not done anything.
Listen, Paul, I find that outrageous. He has given us cheaper bus fares, 86 pence, not yet, 86 pence off our bills not yet, not October, and he's going to solve homelessness. And if you're severely disabled and you've got a bus pass, you can now get on a bus at 3 a.m. and not just at 11 p.m. I find it extraordinary that you don't think he's achieved anything.
Well, I'm sorry. Apart from,
don't you feel like an idiot now, eh? Now I've pointed all those things out, eh?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but apart from teaching his eyebrows to jump up and down when he moves, the bloke has done absolutely nothing.
It's genuinely embarrassing, isn't it? But there's been a Burnham bounce. He's going to have an election in 2027. We're being told by the experts.
I think Nigel Farage did say that there was going to be an election a lot sooner than what people expected. And I think the bond markets are going to make that happen, I think.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly getting worse. Our borrowing costs are sky high, over 5% for a 10-year deals. And again, this is the interest. That's what people. It's not people say the yield. No, this is what we're paying to borrow this money, and we ain't got any money, and we're not likely to have any more coming in because apparently number 10 are going to be in charge of growth. No, they're not. It's going to be number 10 North.
Yeah, and this man has not. I don't think he's had a proper job since he left infant school, has he?
He might have had a paper round.
Well, yeah, that is a proper hard work. I mean, he's a man from the north, so walking up and down those cobbled stones at 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I can see him running the country at that age.
I love it. I love it. Paul, thank you very much. Appreciate your call. Let's go straight to Nigel. He's in London. Hello, Nigel.
Hi, Julia. How are you? I hope you're well. I'd like to make some points, if I may.
Yep.
I don't think anyone, including Andy Burnham, has costed what it's going to cost to run 10 North.
Yep.
It's a complete vanity product. It's a waste of time. It's going to be billions, not millions. And he hasn't even thought about it. You know, are we going to have the cabinet going up and down on trains or by car, a special escort group moving around this protector of it? It's just ridiculous. It's just nonsense. That's the first point. The second point is, listen to your guests earlier on, we have to realise that China is the world's production line and the world's factory, and it's never going to change. I'm sorry to say that this government, the previous Labour government, and indeed the previous Tory government, they don't understand the workings of business.
No.
They don't give any businesses any incentive to grow. And it's not governments that grow the economy, it's businesses that grow the economy.
Yep.
Now, when I also live in another country. There you are patted on the back if you do well, you're incentivized to do well, but here you're kicked in the backside, thrown in the ground, and given a tax bill stuck in your
Yeah, I don't think people realise how different other countries have in terms of the difference in terms of their attitude towards businesses, towards people growing creating jobs. Actually, how dare someone say they're going to move abroad to avoid taxes when someone has paid hundreds of millions in tax and created thousands of jobs. And you treat those people like they're scum. They'll say, well, bye, thanks very much, I'll leave.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a foreign investor, I'd love to know what incentives there are for me to start a business in the country, employ 100, 1,000, 2,000 people, because there isn't.
No, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Actually, Claire Coutinho, the energy, Shadow Energy, she's been doing a speech this morning. As she pointed out, there is absolutely no such thing as high growth and low energy. And the stats are very, very clear on that, that's for sure. Nigel, thank you for that. 11:36 is the time. Actually, it leads us in very nicely to our next topic. Rupert Darwell is up next, talking about the cost of Labour's net zero. And are we or aren't we going to get that decision on North Sea oil and gas fields? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:38 is the time. Well, look, let's talk about all things green or not, as the case may be, with Rupert Darwell, author of Green Tyranny. A very, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
It's interesting, Rupert Darwell, that we are talking right now on a day when apparently climate change is over because we've had some rain.
That's right. The drought has, the climate change does seem to have taken a little pause this this mid-August.
So difficult to keep up with whether it's climate or weather, isn't it? I jest, of course. Now, look, I do want to talk about this state of some analysis that was actually carried out by Ed Miliband's department and was scrapped. And no wonder it was scrapped, because it basically looks like, as the Tories have claimed, bombshell analysis suggesting that net zero dogma is costing families £540 a year, which is a heck of a lot of money when you think we're going to get 86 pence a week off our bills come October. How do they come up with that figure?
Well, I haven't looked at the figure in detail, and I suspect that's an underestimate. I mean, the truth is that we have the highest electricity prices in the world, particularly for businesses and indeed for retail customers, for households, and there are also it's not just the direct costs of supporting renewables, it's also the system costs that go along with it, and those include having to have to run a parallel network of gas-fired power stations. It's the extra grid connection costs. Yep. It's all the balancing costs. It's the constraint costs that are now running at about £1 billion a year when the wind in particular is producing too much and it can't be transported down to where people actually use electricity. And then there's the wider economic costs of net zero policies, which are essentially about putting businesses out of business. Yeah. That is a huge cost, which we can guarantee aren't in those numbers.
No, and it's interesting, again, we're talking about, Number 10 North are going to be driving economic growth. No, what drives economic growth is people being able to run businesses, and if you can't afford to run a business because of your energy costs, which is a huge part of your cost and a huge part of what you're going to be passing on to consumers, so whether you can compete with cheaper stuff coming in from China, that's what it's all about. Now, it's fascinating. I know that you've got a brand new book out in October, and I'd love to get you back on nearer the time to talk in more detail about it. But it's called The Age of Error and the West's Undoing. Explain a little bit about what that's about, because you kind of just sort of almost summed it up, didn't you, in what you just said?
Well, what it's about is that in 2006, and I can date this quite precisely, the leaders of the West actually believed in energy realism. And from 2000 onwards, the leaders of the West had a holiday from realism, not just energy realism, but also geopolitics. And it's the clash between the net zero zealots who occupy the mind space of Western elite thinking and the reality of the energy reality, but the reality of geopolitics on the ground.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that's bringing net zero and the insanity of trying to get rid of hydrocarbon energy, bringing it to an end, is geopolitics.
Yeah.
If you want to stand up to Russia and China, you're not going to do it with wind farms and solar panels.
But also anyone paying any attention, I'm always amazed by how many politicians will vote for these policies, thanks Theresa May in 2019, but not actually understand some basic stuff. You know, net zero, the number of Labour MPs in particular, and Conservatives I've spoken to, who seem to think that net zero was about having complete energy, well, getting rid of fossil fuels entirely. I mean, that is genuinely the view of Miata Fanbula, the new energy secretary, who that's what she thought a few years ago we should do. But they didn't know it was just electricity. They didn't know also that it was net zero. So it was about what we could import stuff that was made with fossil fuels. We just couldn't make it here. They didn't even understand what that was. Most of them don't have any knowledge at all of what percentage of our energy is electricity and what isn't, or even what, you know, how long we would need to continue using fossil fuels for. The politicians, genuinely, I would say 95+% of them have less knowledge about this subtopic than a 6-year-old, and yet are making decisions which are totally not desirable, not even remotely achievable. I mean, no one with any knowledge at all thinks that we're not going to be using fossil fuels in 30 years' time.
Yeah, there's a very interesting Canadian academic called Václav Smil, who's written on energy transitions, and he is he's not, I wouldn't call him a green, but he lives quite a low carbon life, if you like.
Oh, how grim.
He consumes very little, but he says we are not that hydrocarbons are fundamental to Western civilization.
Yes.
And the idea that we can transition off them in decades is completely nonsensical. And you're absolutely right. Politicians are utterly ignorant of this. However, I do think the wind has changed on all this. The winds are now blowing from energy realism, which is why we're seeing quite significant shifts. And my prediction is that one of the big dividing lines in the next election will be parties that vote to abolish net zero and the Climate Change Act, repeal the Climate Change Act, and those that remain committed to the climate change.
Absolutely, 100%. I think that is going to be the big dividing line. But it's fascinating. You know, taxpayers are going to face a bill to fund renewables while also paying grants to persuade energy firms to maintain capacity under Ed Miliband's net zero crusade that is still ongoing. And yet we've got this expectation that at some point in the autumn, when it's no longer hot and people's lawns have had a chance to grow back and people can cope a bit better, that when people aren't associating it with climate change in their having watched too much BBC, that Andy Burnham is going to basically approve, well, allow his energy secretary, she's got the quasi-judicial role, to approve the gas and oil fields that have already got a licence from the Tories but have been challenged legally in the North Sea to go ahead, Jackdaw and Rosebank. But what's interesting is even the likes of Mr. Green Energy entrepreneur Dale Vince, him with the kafir permanently and halfway through a haircut, that he has urged Andy to allow more drilling for oil and gas in the North Sea. He's completely changed his tune on this. He says, we are using fossil fuels for the next couple of decades. That's a reality. If we approach things differently, we can actually make sense of drilling the North Sea. He's a man who's made millions out of pushing green energy. And he's a man who's pushed that people like me who say this is all a load of nonsense should be, basically sent to prison. I mean, literally has said that. And here he is, apparently, about to support a policy that will allow more North Sea oil drilling. What do you reckon of that?
It only remains for Zach Polanski to say that his view should be censored. I mean, that's where we're going.
He should probably go to prison.
But no, that is evidence that it is shifting. The debate is shifting, and what matters to people are outcomes. And I don't think people, and politicians in particular, realise that we have a real challenge with electricity power resilience in this country. It's not just that there's not enough gas. There's not enough gas-fired power stations, many of which were built in the 1990s. They'll be coming offline soon, and we won't have enough kit to keep the lights on. That's the real challenge.
Yeah, it is just extraordinary. And again, no nuclear power stations being built, people getting approval. Labour said they were going to do that. Where are they? Why does everything take so much longer? But we are in a situation, and we apparently come close to it every winter. Could have come close to it during the solar eclipse, apparently, where we are in a situation where we cannot always keep the lights on. We cannot maintain energy supplies. We're having to ration, talking about rationing energy. I mean, this is absurd in the 21st century.
No, it is absolutely absurd. I mean, the great thing about the 20th, the last century, was the ubiquity of always on, always available power at demand. And now they're changing it, well, in terms of demand response, so that you're going to have to power down your power consumption when there's not enough wind and not enough sun. And that's regressive. That is going back. It's not going forward.
But the people who are pushing this, as you say, are the elite, who will be the rich people who can afford to pay the extra sums for when there's rationing of fuel. And it'll always, as it always is, it's people at the bottom of the pile who lose out. Rupert Darwell, you've always been a voice of reason on this. I'm glad people seem to be somehow listening. I think basically they've just realised that voters won't put up with this nonsense anymore. Author of Green Tyranny, soon to be a new book out in October, author of The Age of Error and The West's Undoing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us. Very quick word from Benedict Spence.
I was delighted to hear the name Václav Smil. That's not something you expect to hear of a Wednesday morning, but I thought it was really fascinating, actually, that, as you say, you've even got Dale Vince coming out and saying things are really that bad that even I'm prepared to sort of relegate my entire mad ideology. But it also tells us he's a massive Labour donor. It also tells us that is what Andy Burnham's going to do. Of course, and I think that's a real interesting sea change. The ground. Yeah, a mouthpiece for the entire green lobby and industry in this country has come out and gone, might be going to happen, might have to. Very interesting.
11:48 is the time. Take a quick break. We're going to be talking to former Royal Navy Commander Tom Sharp, OBE, about what is going on in Ukraine and what is going on with the Iran war as well. This is Talk.
Cannot make
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk. 11:51 is the time. Let's talk about international affairs. Tom Sharp is a former Royal Navy commander and joins us right now. Very good morning to you, Tom.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Two big international stories I want to cover. First of all, is this sacked Ukrainian defense minister. This is Mikhailo Fedorov. He has called for wartime elections in Ukraine. Actually, they are forbidden elections in Ukraine under the constitution during wartime for very obvious reasons. We didn't have elections in Britain during the Second World War. But we're talking about a country that's partially taken by the Russian forces. But he was sacked by the President Zelensky. What is the significance of this call?
Well, it's a ripple, isn't it? I think the significance is it hands a PR coup to Moscow.
Yeah.
I don't think it's much more than that. I don't think this is going anywhere. This is someone who's been removed from a senior position, which is, again, very, is not unprecedented at all in wartime. People get shuffled. They say they're wrong, rightly or wrongly. Doesn't matter. He's gone. He's angry about it, and he's calling for something that constitutionally can't happen. And even if the constitution were to change, how on earth do you make that a fair and a fair election?
So many people abroad.
Security.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's something of nothing, except for the fact that it does, it shows weakness, it shows divide, it gives gifts, PR gifts to the Kremlin who frankly don't need them.
Yeah, and indeed, the extraordinary situation we have many in America who argue, he's not a Democrat, he's a dictator, Zelensky, and having to point out, I've had people saying, America saying, we had elections during World War II. Yeah, you hadn't been invaded. You hadn't had, half your women and children leave the country. Come on, you're not talking about remotely the same thing. Britain, as I say, did not have elections during World War II.
It was one of the Trump talking points, wasn't it, when he was really kind of having a downer on Zelensky. And World War II comparisons are fascinating. I love historians. I love their take on things. But these things are always different. There are some comparisons and you need to use them wisely. And there are some that are just irrelevant. And that, in this case, it's irrelevant.
Yeah, we know, people are growing war weary. People do. There'll be a lot of people in Ukraine who would, 3 years ago, absolutely, we wouldn't cede a single inch of territory to the Russians, who might say, you know what, to get life back to normal and our young men not being killed on the front line, we would sacrifice some of the territory. But again, that would involve a constitutional referendum, I understand. And again, would you trust, without complete and utter assurances, really meaningful from America and European allies, that Russia wouldn't just take a break and then come back for more?
100%. That is a no-brainer in this case. I'm sure we'll come on to Iran, but it's the same problem. It's the same problem set. They will just take stock, restore, rearm, and then go again in whichever direction suits them next. I think there's absolutely no doubt about that.
Let's turn our attention to what's going on in Iran. Well, a lot less attention being put on Ukraine because of what happened in Iran, actually previously what happened with Gaza as well. But we've had Donald Trump basically saying if Oman, a US and European ally, if Oman becomes a problem with the Strait of Hormuz, then we'll bomb the S out of them. We've now had him declaring the Strait of Hormuz as a new US territory. We've now got Tehran threatening to attack targets in Europe if the conflict escalates, and Trump has, we're told, broken off all talks with Iran. We seem to hear something slightly different, not even every day, sort of every few hours when it comes from Donald Trump. What do you think is really going on?
Yeah, there's definitely two biorhythms to this, aren't there? There's the sort of macro scale, which happens every other week or so, where we threaten massive escalation, followed by immediate withdrawal. The taco, for want of to use that expression. There's a lot of what looks like market manipulation going along here, but the idea that you can make Hormuz into an American territory, I mean, when Iran came back saying you can't take territory via tweet, it really says something when Iran starts to look statesmanlike.
I have to say, some of their messaging online has been very, very strong, and Donald Trump has massively I mean, I'm rather supportive of you need to take out the Iranian, nuclear threat, etc. I'm quite supportive of a lot of these things, but it is just to me quite extraordinary that Donald Trump has lost I suppose, the PR war on this, when there's very clearly good and evil in this.
Right, and if you're talking about, let's say you extend the idea of making Hormuz into an American territory, if you just forget the fact that it's absurd, then clearly you're going to need Oman's support. And so then to then threaten them, and when they've been extraordinarily neutral in all of this, and there's Duqm base there, which is heavily used by the US, they're a real asset there, if not an ally. And then the next minute you threaten to bomb them, it makes no sense. The dots don't join up, and it just looks, even the sort of official information on oil flow that's going both ways doesn't tally. It doesn't tally with what the experts are analysing. Yeah. So you just start to doubt everything that comes out, and then you start looking at ship deployments like the Lincoln, and that's been in the headlines over the weekend, and you're getting official statements on that, and it's impossible to know what the ground truth is on these things because that the side that you would normally trust is not telling the truth.
Yeah, and I do think that then does become a very big issue, does it not? And again, we had Andy Burnham, reiterating his support for Ukraine, but again, the Labour government being very clean, they haven't been that involved in what's going on in Iran, and I think they're heaving a sigh of relief there as it's carried on and got into this quagmire. Tom Sharp, I don't know where this is going to go. It seems like this is going to be a conversation we're going to continue to have, and we're going to be dealing with the fallout with the cost of oil and gas as well for a long time. But Tom Sharp, OBE, former Royal Navy Commander, thank you for that analysis. Benedict Spence, I know you keep very much on top of a lot of these international affairs.
The whole thing is a fiasco. If the conflict was inevitable, and there seems to have been a real lack of preparedness for the inevitable conflict, even though the United States and Israel were the ones that actually ended up initiating this phase of it, a real lack of understanding that if you want regime change in a country like Iran, it's going to take more than bombing, and it's going to take a lot more than economic sanctions. Iran has been under economic sanctions for a very long time, and it has not
pretty
toppled.
Much since
it has not toppled the regime. The regime has reaugmented
economic
itself.
Sanctions don't work if they don't care about their own people,
and if the entire apparatus of the domestic state is set up to stop internal repression, to stop the creation of any kind of underground movement or official opposition, these things don't exist.
And you're willing to slaughter 40,000 young people on the streets.
Exactly, and they're more than prepared to do that, and plenty more. So actually, what is the end game here? If you're going to have regime change, you're going to have to invade, which they don't want to. Of course they don't want to. I understand why they don't want to. But in which case, what is the end point here? Because you can't negotiate with them either.
Well, other than they should have secured the Strait of Hormuz first up, and they.
But that was never a possibility.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was never a possibility. No. That's why when this war happened, you were going to have to accept that you were going in full metal jacket, and it was going to be ugly, and they weren't prepared for that.
Well, the West isn't prepared to lose any lives, and that's an argument against it. Good, we might have fewer wars. However, also we can't stand up to tyrants. So much more to talk about that. No doubt we'll come back to it another day.
We'll be here next week.
Exactly. God knows what Donald Trump's going to tweet the next hour. We'll be back in just a couple of moments after an update on the latest headlines. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 2 minutes past midday is the time. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, watching on YouTube, all the other ways you can watch and listen, great to have your company. If you do miss anything from the show, missed anything from the show already today, we're not having many tweets going out at the moment. I'm certainly on some topics. So if you do miss anything, you can always go to our YouTube page. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show is what it's called. Easy to find, and you can hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. We're going to be talking more about the economy. We're going to number 10 North apparently taking over responsibility for economic growth from the Treasury. A huge transfer of power. That's what Andy Burnham was told the Times today. We're going to be talking about inflation and borrowing costs. And unemployment going up. It's all going terribly well, everybody. All fault the Tories who left power 2 years ago, just in case you were checking. Also, Green Party members looking at releasing a plan for a sweeping crackdown on freedom of speech. Comes as Zach Polanski has tweeted yesterday demanding an inquiry into the culture and behaviour of the press and saying media regulation now. Isn't it funny how many people who think of themselves as progressives want to have regulation and, let's call it what it is, censorship of what people can see and hear. Also, we'll be chatting to the common sense imam and Islamic scholar Dr. Taj Hergé about whether reports of alarming levels of anti-Muslim hatred in the capital city are a true reflection of the situation. Look, any targeted harassment, abuse, certainly violence against anyone because of either the colour of their skin or their ethnicity or their sexuality or anything like that, absolutely disgusting and unacceptable. So I do want to talk about that. We'll see what he has to say. Benedict Spence still with me, he's a Conservative commentator, and he's still joining us today. We've been talking about this issue of economic power and growth and the latest set of stats. And we're going to talk to Labour peer Lord Fawkes in just a couple of moments. But it is putting all the figures together this week. I mean, they're not good. We've got the latest inflation figures. It rose from 2.6% to 2.9%. So that's the figures up to July. But they did the figures too. A year to July. Last one's, a year to June. But basically, it's gone up. Oh, 0.3%. No, that's not good news. No. We saw the unemployment figures yesterday going up to 4.9%. We also saw, crucially, we saw pay for people in the public sector has gone up about 6%. Pay in the public sector, so in the private sector, the gross
people who work,
people who perhaps are working from home right now, going up by just 2%. So we see that difference there with all those pay rises we've been seeing for the public sector. Again, in jobs where they get better pension deals, better holiday deals, and more job security. So, I mean, there used to be the deal that you earn less in the public sector, but you've got all those other things. Well, now you're getting all of those things. That, we're basically just going to eventually we're just going to be one big public sector with an island attached. But we also saw 700. I mean, I had to double check the figures with you earlier because I must have misremembered that 700,000 more people claiming universal credit than the year before. Well, so when Labour were in power, and a year on, when Labour were in power, that's happened. These figures are all terrifying. We've also got the cost of borrowing going up. That's when we have these, they do government borrowing, they issue these gilts, 5-year, 10-year gilts. The cost of those, so they're called yields. What that is basically the interest rate that we have to pay to someone who, they lend us this money and we're not going to pay them back for 10 years, but enough time, we're going to pay them a certain percentage interest. We pay way more than pretty much every other Western country. We pay more than Greece. Have you heard about Greece's economy, people? They had to be bailed out by the EU. If you have to be bailed out by the EU, you know your economy is in a bad state. Yeah. We are in a terrible state. We've got debt, it's over 3 trillion now. We have got government borrowing pretty much approaching 100% of our economy, our GDP. These stats are all shocking, but it's all going to be solved, Benedict, by moving delivery of growth, good growth, every postcode, be very specific about the pledge from Andy Burnham, to number 10 North to be in charge.
Yeah, it's made more, I think, concerning by the sheer number of highly wealthy individuals and organisations, especially in the United States, that are currently offloading certain assets in order to make sure that they have large reserves of cash, because they are anticipating quite a large market collapse at some point in the next couple
But also
of years.
a lot of people doing investment in AI, a lot of people borrowing for AI, and that is putting up prices
That
as
is
well.
putting up prices, and that's partly why they think
And
that
the
there is
Iran
going
war
to... Yeah,
and
that's
energy
why they think
costs.
that there's going to be a market crash. China is having to re-enter the oil markets, having used and exhausted its strategic reserve as a result of Iran. All of these things are going to make everything go up, and then at some point it's going to pop. And we are uniquely, somehow, once again, having done this whole dance before in 2008, we are really badly exposed to what's going to happen when that does happen. And this is, of course, why you've then got Nigel Farage, who has come out and said several times, I think there's going to be an early election. I think that they will be forced by the markets, because right now we've just got one Prime Minister who's followed another Prime Minister who doesn't seem to be particularly economically literate, doesn't have much of a plan, and is sort of paddling about at the moment with lots of little small sort of attempted feel-good things about, well, there's too many homeless people. Yeah, but it's bus fares, and we're going to take 80 pence off your energy bills or whatever it is. Not getting to grips with the major structural problems, just like his predecessor didn't. To be fair, just like Conservative predecessors didn't. We are kicking the can further and further down the road, racking up the debt. We are going to be absolutely battered if this, even half of the worst-case scenario does happen, as many people think it's going to. It's really upbeat, isn't it, though? But, it's all in Manchester, and that's
Happy
fine.
Wednesday, everybody. Well, let's see if we can get a little bit more upbeat of an attitude from our next guest, Lord Foulkes. He's Labour peer and former minister under Tony Blair. When, Lord Foulkes, times were great, but they ain't great anymore, are they, under Labour?
Good afternoon, Julia. Lovely to be with you again.
And you.
I'm just hoping that sometime soon I'll be able to sit next to you like Benedict, so that you can have Labour commentator as well as Conservative commentator, so there's a bit more balance. But anyway, here I am.
No, don't worry. Sky News and the BBC do that. Don't worry.
What can I ask? You want to know about
Well,
growth?
I'm just saying, no, well, this is the thing. We've got, I've just reeled off all these terrifying economic figures for us, the world outlook and where we are. Things aren't looking good, and it appears that the solution to us delivering, quote, good growth in every postcode, as Andy Burnham has said he wants, and still don't know what good growth is or how he's going to do it in every postcode. But basically, the idea is that we're going to have it in the hands of number 10 North, not the Treasury, and that's apparently going to make a difference. Can you tell me how it will make a difference?
I think that will help. There's far too much power at the moment in the Treasury and in the southeast of England. And in fact, I would go further. I would move Parliament away from London up to the north of England.
Why?
Because I think there's far too much concentration in the media, in the civil service, and in the legislature in the southeast of England.
What if all those people say, do you know what, with all due respect, I don't want to move out of London. I've got my family here. My kids are at school here. I like where I live. I don't want to move. We know what's happened whenever we've seen some major government sort of quangos, and they get, even to happen to the Office for National Statistics, and they're sent off, I think it was Newport, and basically a load of their top people went, no thanks, with all due respect, I don't want to live in Newport, I want to live where I'm currently living, and so they didn't go. You could lose a lot of top expertise from people who choose not to move out of the capital city.
I know you're not a great fan of the BBC, but they moved up to Salford, and I think that's been quite successful.
Well, no, the BBC didn't move up to Salford. They moved some of their programming up to Salford, and an awful lot of their presenters simply go there and stay in a hotel or a rented apartment for 3 days a week to do their shows and then come back again.
No, I think a lot of them are moving up. And
I mean, what are we, 10, 15 years on?
We do need to get more.
And what difference has it made?
We need to get more
What
power.
difference has it made?
Come down to London,
George,
as you know.
what difference has it made?
I come down, well, let me tell you that I come down from London from a Monday to a Thursday, and it is just packed full of people. The buses can't move, you can't walk around. It's getting.
I walk around every day. I get on the tube every day.
Far too concentrated in London at the moment.
No, but I don't know. Look, we are a more centralised power than many countries, but there are historic reasons.
Almost any other
But there
country.
are historic reasons for that. Partly it's the fact that we've been a nation state longer than most of those countries. So there are very, very specific reasons for that. Look, we absolutely need to have more focus on what happens in the Midlands, the North, Southwest. We need to have certainly better transport routes. I wouldn't be building HS2 or worrying about Crossrail in London when you've got major, brilliant cities across the northern half of the country who don't have decent transport links between them. And I think we've had too much focus on the southeast. However, do we need to move an office with a load of civil servants coming from their Islington homes to the north to make that happen? Couldn't governments just govern to the benefit of the majority of the country?
Talking to civil servants and listening to civil servants, they've got a particular frame of mind, particular attitude, because they live within such easy reach of London and they don't understand the rest of the United Kingdom. It's not just Manchester, it's Liverpool, it's Newcastle, it's Scotland, it's Wales, it's Northern Ireland. And I think a lot of civil servants, because they just travel in, as you do, on the tube or whatever in the morning and back in the evening, they've got that attitude, which is really very stifling.
Yeah, but I do that, and yeah, I can still understand that cars and buses matter far more to most people in the country. How come I'm able to somehow get out of my own skin, but all these brilliant civil servants we pay huge salaries to can't? I don't understand. What is it that the people...
Don't underestimate yourself. You're very wise. You see things.
Bless you. I'm gonna have that as my telephone ring now from now on, having George Folks tell me that. No, but listen, here's the thing. What is it about moving the delivery of growth to number 10 North, that little office in the north? What about that is going to mean that we're going to get growth when we otherwise wouldn't, or wouldn't get as much if it was happening in the Treasury? What's going to happen that's different?
I think part of it is also not just being away from London. I've been concentrating on that. It's being away from the Treasury. I think also the Treasury has a particular attitude of mind which doesn't encourage growth. We've tried it before and it didn't work as well, I must admit, when we did it with George Brown and Harold Wilson.
We're going back a way.
I go back a long way. But I think it can be done, and I think it's worth trying to get away from that. I've seen people in the Treasury. They're very much oriented towards saving money, cutting things.
But this is the thing. So why are we suddenly going to hire a load of people in the north who have a different attitude? Because this is the thing, as a lot of our callers are pointing out, and feel free to have your say, 0344 499 1000, do get in touch in response to this interview, is that, you know, governments don't create growth. Governments getting the hell out of the way of businesses and individuals create growth, and yet this is a government. If Andy Burnham moves it, you know, the decision making on this issue to the north, does that mean he will be ending the threshold, the tax threshold freezes that have dragged more people into higher tax? Will that mean he'll dump the national insurance tax on jobs? Will that mean that he will lower the cost of hiring someone on minimum wage when, frankly, a lot of these people are not going to be worth that value? You know, 30 grand effectively what it costs for somebody who's hiring somebody on minimum wage now.
I notice all the people who are attacking minimum wage are earning hundreds of thousands of pounds themselves. I think I asked you once before, Julia, and you quite rightly, understandably anyway, not rightly, understandably, wouldn't tell me what you're earning. But it's always people who are earning hundreds of thousands of pounds who criticise the minimum wage.
No, I approve of the minimum wage. I think the minimum wage is a moral thing and the right thing. However, when the minimum wage is set at a rate where, and it was predicted by all the experts and the business leaders, and then it happened, so we know it was true, that when you put the minimum wage to a rate where it's too high and it's not cost effective for businesses who are going, the cost of employing someone on that wage is not worth what I'm going to get out of them in terms of economic input to my business, because these people understand profit and loss in a way that civil servants apparently and politicians don't, that they then don't hire that person. But if they could pay them a lower wage legally, they probably would have hired them. And that's the difference between someone having a job or not. Then, I'm sorry, the minimum wage is too high.
But if you pay, you said you were in favour of it.
I'm in favour of there being a minimum wage. The rate at which it's set needs to be economically sane.
But the thing is, the more people who are earning a bit more, they spend their money.
They do spend, except when... when businesses don't hire more people and they let people go, which is what the official statistics show they have done.
No. The people at the lower incomes, when they get an increase, they spend their money in the shop.
They do.
Wait a minute.
But when there are fewer of them, there isn't more money spent.
Let me finish. The multi-millionaires don't spend their money in the shops. They buy another yacht.
But George, you're missing the point. when there are fewer people on minimum wage because businesses don't hire them and businesses sack people because they're no longer cost effective for their business, then there are few of them and then they don't have the money to spend in the shops. We've seen the stats, 700,000 more people on universal credit in the last year. That didn't happen under the Tories, it happened under Labour as a result of the minimum wage hike, the national insurance hikes. So would Number 10 North change that and help deliver growth? Yes or no?
Well, you know that we want the minimum wage will go up, and it's right that it should go up.
So we won't
it's right
see
that
growth. We won't see more jobs.
You don't want people to starve. You know, it's really very.
No
difficult.
one is starving in this country, I can absolutely assure you. Right, I'll move on from that. We're not going to get anywhere there. Let's talk about Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader. He has called for the UK to join the EU Migration Pact to tackle the small boat arrivals. We've seen that increase. We're told by a French minister today that, you know, we've got too many pull factors. We've had a Labour MP, Sam Rushworth, speaking to Jeremy Kyle on breakfast, said basically the reason why illegal migrants come here is we've got a black economy, but mostly it's because people speak English, because, he says, we spent a couple of centuries going round and colonising it and teaching everyone our language. Do you think that we should join a scheme with the EU to share out illegal migrants when they arrive in whichever country? And do you think that the reason why we've got such pull factors is because we were a colonising empire?
I agree completely with Ed Davey. I think he's right, and I hope Andy Burnham will listen to him and take account of what he said. The problem with all these people coming to Britain is not the pull factor particularly. It's because of Brexit, because we left the European Union. If we were still in the European Union, then automatically people coming to the United Kingdom would be returned automatically to the first country of entry.
You know that the first boats started arriving, we had the lorries, we had people in the lorries, and that's still going on. And then when that was sort of partly tackled, not fully solved, we started seeing the boats from 2018 onwards. We didn't actually leave the EU until, I believe, was it in January 2021? Yeah, I remember it was over the New Year period. So in those 2 years, we weren't able to return people. And in the period before that, we were returning only a handful of people as well, long before we had actually left the EU.
Well, what Ed Davey is suggesting is...
you're just going to ignore that
wait a minute. What he's suggesting, as I understand it, is that this arrangement now, which has been agreed by the European Union, and now it's just relatively recent, ensures that people return to the country, the first country that they enter.
That's not what happens. They are expected. No, the policy is that they are expected. You said you fully support the policy, so I thought you'd know what it meant. The policy is that people are expected to seek asylum in the first country they enter, and after that point, they are then shared out among countries based on their population, their GDP, etc. We, being a very large country and one of the richer countries, would be expected to take a large share of those people. So we would be able to return people, but then we'd get a whole big plane load more. What do you think of that? You support that policy?
Now you're saying we're one of the richer countries. You were talking us down just a little while ago. You were saying how terrible we are. How our economy was
Our
collapsing.
economy is in a terrible state, but we are still one of the richer countries. These two things can both be true at the same time.
So we're richer than France and richer than Germany, are we?
I don't think we are richer than France and Germany.
No, but you just said we were one of the richer countries.
Do you know what the G7 do you understand what the G7 list of nations is? The G20 list of nations, the biggest economies in the world. Yeah.
Yes.
So we're one of those. That would tell you that we're one of the richer economies. We're one of the bigger countries, so we have more people.
No. But you said we were going to have all these people having to stay here.
You said you supported the policy. That's what the policy is, George.
Yes, but then you say that France and Germany are richer than us, so they would take more than us, wouldn't they?
Okay, now whether France or OK, I'm going to break this to you. I hate to tell you, there are more people in the EU than just two other very rich countries, France and Germany. While we were in the EU, we were one of the 2 or 3 countries that were net contributors to the EU. There are many other countries in the EU much poorer than us. There's the Italies, there's the Greeces.
Italy.
Yes, a G7 country, but nevertheless poorer than us. That these countries have far more arrivals. Those arrivals would be shared out with us as this policy, which you say you support.
They return No, they return to the first country that they came in.
And then they're shared out among European countries.
No, they return to the first country. How can you?
You think the EU policy is that everybody would just return to, Italy, Greece, and Spain, and then Italy, Greece, and Spain would go, that's fine, we'll keep them all. I don't even know where to go with this. You said you supported this policy, but you don't actually know what the policy is.
I know exactly what it is.
It just wasn't Brexit, so you supported it, right?
No, I know exactly what it is, and that it is returning them to the first.
And then what happens after they're returned?
No, they stay in the country.
They stay in the country. You think Giorgia Meloni in Italy, you think she signed up to a policy where they just get to keep all of those people who arrive on their shores from across the Med? Really?
I think they're going to try and stop them coming into the country.
Are they?
That's exactly what happens.
Goodness me. I'm going to ask you one final question. We're going to about something else. We've got the Green Party, Zach Polansky, calling for an inquiry into the culture and behaviour of media. We've got a vote, a policy being put forward at their party conference coming up soon, looking into more state control of the media. We've had their leader, Zach Polansky, basically saying that we should have media regulation now. Do you agree?
I'm not a great fan of Zach Polansky, incidentally. I think he's a bit of a con artist, and he's changed his name. He's changed his.
People are allowed to change their names.
Wait a minute. He's changed his approach to a whole range of things, and but I do think and I'm not in favour of an inquiry. Inquiries are very expensive. I don't know how this kind of inquiry would be set up, but I do think there ought to be that Ofcom ought to have more powers to deal with media bias with media bias and with inaccuracies in the media. And I think I think he is making this call because of what happened to Jason Hardy. And I think it was a great sadness what happened to Jason Hardy. I think he was persecuted by sections of the media.
Which sections?
Sections of the media.
Which sections?
The ones that carried stories about him.
So pretty much every national newspaper and radio and television organisation, The Guardian included.
Yes, I think The Guardian.
That's one of the sections of the media.
I read The Guardian articles about him, and I thought they were a bit unbalanced.
In what way?
Because I think they were concentrating on some of the some of the accepted discrepancies in his account.
For instance, The Guardian particularly exposed the fact that the police denied that there had been a police investigation into a hooded knife man who confronted him twice, no CCTV available, and he hadn't called the police, and they severed pig's head sent to his parents' home. And these two claims made a number of times were totally unverifiable and according to the police, had never, ever happened, even though he said they were police investigation. The Guardian reported on that. Do you think they shouldn't have reported that?
No, I just.
So that was okay.
No, I know. I think the general balance of the reporting was critical rather
there should have been so when he was being feted as this amazing professor, youngest black professor at California, and all the stories about his fundraising and sporting endeavour, that was obviously all very, very positive. And then when it started emerging that actually there were plagiarism accusations and that pretty much everything he's ever said in the public domain was questionable at best and provably untrue at worst, you think that the coverage should have been more balanced? Do you mean that people should have said, but he's a great guy? I mean, what would have made it more balanced when you are exposing somebody who has been in the public eye, has got a great job, got a great, being feted in the media, got apparently a very, 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 very lucrative book deal for his memoirs about his life, which turns out to have been pretty much a Walter Mitty fantasy. What would have made that coverage balanced?
I think the extent of the coverage.
Oh, so it's too much coverage.
I think the extent of the coverage, the intensity of the coverage, and the fact that there was a balance against him critical
So
of
when
it.
people were fating him, that was okay. When people were pointing out that actually it didn't add up, that was not okay, and they should be limited. So should the media be limited in the number of articles they can write, or how critical they can be? Should there be a limit?
I think it's important that the media get it balanced.
What does that mean? I'm asking you what that means.
It means putting both sides of the
Putting both
argument.
sides. Well, when someone is saying, Jason Arday at this time claimed this, this and this, we, however, spoke to this, and we cannot verify any of these things, this is untrue. I would say that was very biased, very, very balanced.
I think some of it was balanced, but I think
now some of it was balanced. You think the Guardian article was okay, but everyone else wrote too much?
No, I didn't say that.
The Guardian article. It's very interesting when people say there's a problem with the coverage of a particular story that has ended in, very sadly, the death of a man and children losing their father, which is beyond awful for those children. That somehow, when people are accusing the media of, there have been accusations of media hounding him to death, the media frenzy, lynching is one of the words, an assassination. Some of the words that have been used against the media. And you're saying, well, it wasn't, something about the media coverage wasn't right. I'm trying to establish what about the media coverage was wrong and what should be changed.
Why was it such a big story? Why did it get so huge?
Why do you think it was such a big story?
Why did it get so huge coverage in every medium?
What do you think the answer is to that?
Because I think there were some people who thought that this was a juicy story, that it would get readers and listeners worked up.
So it was a story because it was, I mean, it's very interesting, isn't it? If someone has risen to a very, very sort of highly respected position and been feted on the BBC and elsewhere, as somebody who's got this amazing job as a Cambridge professor from this incredible background that he told us about, when that then emerges not to be true, you think that it's a bit weird that the public wanted to know about it and that the press wanted to write about it?
Did the public want to know about it?
Well, they didn't want to know. I think the public absolutely would like to know if people are living a false life and that someone has got a job of where they've in a highly respected position, earning a good salary and is guest editing the Today programme on the BBC, but actually they got there based on lies. I would have thought that was very much in the, not just interesting to the public, but literally in the full sense of the phrase, of public interest.
Well, it's of public interest, for example, that the Reform Party have kicked Tim Montgomery out at the moment because Zia Youssef, I've met Zia Youssef, he's the most...
Not quite sure why this is related, but carry on.
He's the most arrogant.
You don't like him?
Person, the most aggressive person that I've ever met.
And would it be legitimate for the public to write about, for the press to write about that?
I think there ought to be much more coverage.
Much more coverage. Let me ask you, if Zia Youssef, well, we talk about reform and people are writing about reform all the time. If Zia Youssef or Nigel Farage, written about constantly, criticised, if one of them, God forbid, wouldn't wish on anyone, whether I agree with them, disagree with them in any walk of life, felt that the pressure was too much and did something terrible, would you think that the media had been wrong to cover that story?
I don't think they would. I think that it's clear
it would be acceptable then.
No. I think you have to take account of the particular person, the particular circumstances, and what they're doing, and I think. And
your own personal political views. You're allowed. So the media's allowed to write stories about people that George Fuchs doesn't like, but they're not really allowed to write stories about people.
Or Julia Hartley-Brewer does like, No.
Listen, anyone, I can absolutely assure you, there are plenty of stories and things I've tweeted and interviews I've done with people with whom I have a lot of political alignment, shall we say, who are very unhappy with the questions I've asked. I take on all comers. I think my audience can absolutely vouch for the fact that I take no prisoners from anybody. I call it as I see it. And whether I agree with someone or disagree with them, I would give them the same interview.
But Julia, why do you think there hasn't been the same kind of concentration on some of the things within Reform UK?
I mean, there literally has. It's all over the media.
What? Really?
I just don't think you're looking. Maybe I mean, genuinely, I think you're just not looking too far. If you...
Well, maybe I would know about it Of course, if it wasn't in the media, you're quite right. But it isn't getting the same kind of coverage.
It's been virtually non-stop. George, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm about 10 minutes over date. I mean... We're going to leave it there. Lord Fawkes, Labour peer, former minister under Tony Blair. Benedict, your face was a picture.
Listen,
come back.
If he's not seeing enough of those sorts of stories, that's an argument for more press freedom, not less, because clearly we need more outlets to report on this.
Isn't it fascinating when you actually ask, like, so what would be acceptable coverage of another story?
Yeah, it's nuts. But I mean, it's interesting also, George was talking about, in misinformation in the media. I need to therefore push back on something that he said right at the start. Okay. I'm not a member of the Conservative Party. I know he said, well, you need more balance. I'm just a cynic. I'm not a member of
Conservative with a small c.
Yeah, I'm just a bit right-wing and grumpy.
I'd say
that's
Conservative with a small c, like pretty much
most people.
Majority of people in this country. 12:32 this time. We're going to go and get your calls in. Then we've got a couple of guests to get through. I hope they don't mind waiting. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense.
There's two big pull factors. One is that they speak the English language, because we spent a couple of centuries going around the world colonising it and teaching everyone our language.
There's the reason that the Labour Party will forever allow people to come to this country.
They've got a network of people that speak our language, and the other is that there is a black economy.
Sam, you're not telling me a majority of migrants who come to this country can speak English, are you?
A lot of them come because they feel they can work better in the English language than they can in many of the European languages.
Explain to me then why they don't bring their wives and children.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense. 12:34 is the time. Straight to your calls, 0344 499 1000. Michael's on the line in Birmingham. Michael, you wanted to come back in on press regulation, which seems to be what all the progressive Liberals are calling for now.
Yeah, funny that, isn't it? Maybe I can help your previous guest, Lord, whatever his name is.
Fawkes.
Yeah, what he didn't want to say was he didn't want an ethnic minority guy exposed for the liar, cheat and fraud that he actually was. So let's just get that straight. That's what he was fighting shy of saying. And that's what they want. Because they carried plenty of stories about Nigel Farage and this £5 million.
And quite rightly.
Yeah, remember the Makerfield by-election? What did they dig out of the... How long did that go on for, about what the guy who tweeted and Carol Vorderman got involved?
Yeah.
What about when Sarah Poaching commented on the TV adverts? How long did that one go on for? The list here is endless. The fact is, right, that if what they want, they are Oh, by the way, if you wanted balance, right, why didn't the BBC, with that simpering, sickening video where his boss, I thought she was going to snog him, right? Yeah. What about that video when there was claims against him at that time? Why didn't they have that? And there's claims against this guy as well about the veracity of it. I mean, I have watched since this. I'm sort of like a little bit obsessed with this, I must admit, because I think it's totemic. I've watched some of his lectures. They are disturbing. The content is disturbing. If he was alive today, I'd have reported him to the police for some of the things he's saying about white people in that. And I'm not going to back down from that because that is an absolute fact.
Well, this is the trouble with the DEI and critical race theory. And I can't verify what you've said in terms of what was in the lectures. I don't think I could, spend my time doing that. But a lot of people have been looking back over his work. But that whole world, leaving aside Jason Oddie, that entire world of DI, an awful lot of it. I mean, it's virulently anti-white, which is racist as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I knew this would happen. They've put down a shield. They've put down the race shield.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the people that have been sticking up for our day, I tell you what, their backgrounds, their qualifications need looking into too, and they don't like it. They're scared that they will be looked into. I've seen it firsthand in my workplace, and they've seen it. And it's funny, they didn't demonstrate in Trafalgar Square for Henry Novak, for Anne Widdecombe, or the guy that got hurt in Northern Ireland there, did they? Nowhere to be seen for that.
I have to say, I do just think when people start shouting, "Oh, the media killed somebody," or particularly throwing racist at anyone who is raising any legitimate criticisms, that it does bother me how many people go, "Oh, don't like being called that word. I'll back off." When you're called a racist killer and you ain't racist and you ain't a killer, I think you should defend yourself, as Benedict Spence and I have been saying. Michael, thank you for your call. Very interesting to hear that. I've got a few texts, and just a couple of texts I'll read out just regarding number 10, that transfer of power to number 10 North. Andrew says, Whitehall will continue to be a bloated public entity, more cost and little benefit. This is the Labour way. This is socialism, communism at play. And Rachel says, this is Andy Burnham spreading out accountability. He will be the first to point the finger and say, not me, Gov. And Jane says, this is an absolute shambles. We're not going to even be able to vote our way out of this mess. And Anthony says, Andy Burnham's classic. Make sure your taxes go back into local areas. More money being wasted. That's all it is. Right, we're going to take another quick break. Very, very short one, I promise you. Then we're going to be talking to Philip Kisley about this crackdown on freedom of speech from the Greens. That's what they're looking for. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, 12:40 is the time. Guess what? I'm running behind schedule. What a surprise after that long conversation with George Fuchs. I just can't let some of these things go. And I imagine listening to that was Philip Kisley, his senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, and joins us now to talk about, these calls for a crackdown on freedom of speech, press regulation. It's not just the Greens doing it. An awful lot of people at that vigil, Trafalgar Square, on Monday night, who were calling on the press as being like racist and lynching and assassination of Jason Arday. The Greens are calling for inquiry into the culture and behaviour of media. We've got them proposing state regulation of journalists, forced divestment of media assets. You name it. Media regulation now is what Zach Polanski, the Green Party leader, has said. But again, it's not just the Greens, it's many others on the so-called progressive side. Philip Kisley, what do you make of all of this?
Well, first of all, hi, Julia. It's great to see you. And yes, that was a fantastic conversation. First of all, they say the state is irredeemably racist. Then they say the state needs to control all of the media. What what's going on. It's either one or the other. What
That's
they mean.
a very good point. The media's racist, the state's racist, so we'll have one in charge of the other.
Yeah, what they mean is when we are the state, we will control everything you say, think, and do. I mean, that's it, really. It felt yesterday, I was watching that footage, and I have to say a cold shiver went down my spine a little bit when that lunatic was talking about lynching, when Diane Abbott there was cheering, everybody was cheering along. You know, this was completely divorced from reality, but it felt as though we were seeing a new era. We were seeing woke 2.0 or BLM 2.0.
For me, it was BLM all over again, and that was a mad time. And again, a complete, I mean, so much of it was just utter lies. But the great and the good, the state, former Labour leader, the current housing secretary, on their knees, police officers, many corporations, everyone just went on their knees, you know, footballers, you name it, and the world went mad.
We've always had cranks and lunatics in society who will say anything, but the difference in the past was that the vast majority of people in influential positions would laugh at this and cast it off, or actually do something about it. But you saw the politicians, you saw the senior academics there, all chattering along, and they were really getting into it. That the thing that was frightening with me were the waves of enthusiasm for this fantasy and lying. Now, you have to really worry about the future, because a future that a country that is built not only on fantasy and stupidity, but now we're going into the realms of insanity. It is so divorced. It is so beyond any reasonable grasp of truth and reality that you really do have to worry about where we're going. Now, again, as I was watching that, I went back to the 1980s and my experiences in Hungary, seeing my family in Hungary. And when they were talking again today, when Zach Polanski has been talking about the press and harnessing the press and getting it under control, I thought, my God, we are going into a Soviet era of authoritarian cruelty, the likes of which obviously in this country we have never seen before. And we have to take this seriously. Yes, they're cranked. Yes, they're lunatics, but we have to take it seriously because they have hold of the institutions.
Yeah, indeed. Look, there's certainly been many a time when media, press, newspapers, whatever, have messed up. They get things wrong. There has been activity which a lot of us would not endorse. However, we have a very vibrant media culture in Britain. I like to think a lot of people actually see lots of different media, whether it's newspapers, radio, television, stuff online. And the key thing is that there are things that are more likely to be exposed by one bit of the media than another bit of the media on one particular subject. They might expose that, more likely to expose that. They'll be investigating that topic or those groups of people or that particular political view. And all of that information is information that we need and we deserve and have a right to and should get, so that we can make judgments ourselves as voters, as people who live in this country, about, you know, who is right, who is wrong, which arguments win, what policies, or who should we vote for, who do we trust. But that should be up to us, because it seems to me when anyone ever, we was discussing this earlier, anyone ever wants to control what we hear, it's because they think that the alternative arguments might win. Because I don't need to control people who believe that men can become women and women have penises. I don't need to stop them. I don't need to censor them for a nanosecond. I know that my arguments and my facts beat their arguments, so I'm willing to have an open debate. When it comes to things like climate change, I don't need to stifle people who believe that net zero is the future. I can win that argument on the facts. There are lots of issues or immigration, things like, I don't want to stop anyone from speaking freely, saying anything they want. I just want it to, you have to give me evidence for what you're saying and you need to make your argument. But the only people who don't want to hear both sides are people who are scared of the other side.
Yeah, I think the Jason Arde moment was really telling, because it was so ridiculous, it was so absurd, it was so over the top, it shone such a bright light on Cambridge particularly, but academia broadly, yes, and the institutions generally. There was a knee-jerk reaction from pretty much everybody, including The Guardian. I'm talking about the media here, and it was really refreshing. People wanted to get to the truth. People wanted wanted more of the story because they saw the bigger picture. They saw how important it was for the country. So there was a moment where I thought, oh my God, the media is doing really great here. And I have to say this channel did superbly. We've had a couple of conversations about this, and other people have as well. But then afterwards, certain portions of the media, and especially the independent media, one channel has just essentially released a hostage video of one of their commentators saying, I got it wrong, please forgive me. You know,
we know
all
you're
of a
talking
sudden
about.
ideology kicks in. Ideology kicks in.
Oh, no, and fear of being... when you get the abuse, most people, if you see the stuff that's getting said, the lists of journalists, people, when someone shouts horrible words at people, accuses them of being racist or killer, blah, 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 people panic, as opposed to go, but I know I'm not, I will defend myself, which is my response.
Yeah, I mean, this works on several levels, doesn't it? If I know I'm not a racist, okay? I'm actually from an immigrant background. I know I'm not a racist, okay? And I will call out any racism, real racism, far-right, neo-Nazi stuff when I see it, because it's important to do that, and I do that all the time in the media. But also, I will not have everything being seen through the lens of race, because what that does is blind people to the truth and blind people to reality. And ultimately, we can't get anything done. We don't have the right people in positions of responsibility. And what has happened, it's ended in death. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Philip Kisley, always so good to talk to you, Senior Fellow at the New Cultural Forum. Thank you very much, Steve, for that. And just bringing Benedict Spence, just very briefly on this, because it is interesting that the people wanted to know about this, people felt strong about it. And I think the reason was that, and again, it comes back to this British sense of fair play, that someone might have got a job that they shouldn't have had for the wrong reasons. And I think people in this country feel very strongly about, which is why they don't question. There are lots of people who are ethnic minorities in this country who do. The leaders of the Conservative Party. We had a former Prime Minister. People don't question that. That happens in this country because we believe in meritocracy.
And that's why this, Philip described this as sort of woke 2.0, but I think that the whole woke edifice is a wounded beast. This is not the moment to be cowed. Because as, again, Philip said, this is a truly ridiculous set of circumstances where anybody who reads what the allegations and what's been proven can see this man was a liar, this man was a fraud, this man was a fantasist.
And you could be sorry that he's dead, but that doesn't change those facts.
But this is the key thing. If this is the hill that they have decided they're going to make their latest stand, this is the moment for the press and right-thinking people and people who value fairness to go,
and
no.
truth.
They need to stand up, they need to be pushy, they need to be aggressive and not allow them to get away with it. This is not the time for cowardice.
Well, my worry is that then becomes the narrative. Now people are messaging me and saying, well, all these things were proved not to be the case. These are lies. That's simply not true. I mean, it's extraordinary. 12:48 is the time. We're going to be talking about a new report showing alarming new rise in anti-Muslim hate and prejudice, particularly in the capital city in the first half of the year. We're going to be talking about that with the Imam, Dr. Taj Hergé. Stay tuned for that. This is Talk.
There's two big pull factors. One is that they speak the English language, you know, because we spent a couple of centuries going around the world colonising it and teaching everyone our language.
There's the reason that the Labour Party will forever allow people to come to this country.
They've got a network of people that speak our language, and the other is that there is a black economy.
Sam, you're not telling me a majority of migrants who come to this country can speak English, are you?
A lot of them come because they feel they can work better in the English language than they can in many of the European languages.
Explain to me then why they don't bring their wives and children.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk right now about a very alarming, worrying set of statistics from the anti-Muslim hate monitoring group Tell Mama. They have basically seen reports of anti-Muslim hate and prejudice in London rising hugely in the first half of the year, having surpassed the total annual count for 2023 already, so already that high. They say it's a sustained escalation of anti-Muslim hate. It's 6 times higher in 2025 last year than in 2021. We're looking at 313 reports in 2021, it doubled to 818, well, more than doubled to 818 in 2022, and it rose each year to a record of 1,909 last year. And we've already seen 1,031 reports this year. Well, how bad is this? What is the cause of it? And what can we do to stop it? Because I think we can all agree, can we not, whether we're talking about hatred against gay people, or whether it's against women, or whether it's against Jews. We've seen that massive spate of anti-Semitic attacks against Muslims as well, that absolutely any of this targeted hatred is unacceptable in our country. Let's talk about it with Dr. Tash Hergé. He's an imam. He's also director of the Oxford Institute for British Islam. A very good afternoon to you, Tash.
Right. Hi there, how are you doing?
Thank you for joining us. So first of all, what do you think is the cause behind this rise in the reports of these anti-Muslim incidents?
I mean, clearly there's a rise in anti-Muslim prejudice and bigotry, but that's not the issue. You touched on it, Julia. Why is this happening? Okay, and I think Muslims themselves are largely to blame, because they are always seeing themselves as a victim, and never seeing that them creating conditions that creates antipathy towards them. For example, we don't have the same degree of belligerency against Hindus or Sikhs. Why Muslims? And then this is the issue. And I think this Tell Mama group and many others, they are not looking at really at the cause of the problem. And to me, it's always been the 3 M's. The mullahs, the mosques, and the madrasas. These priests and these mosques and these schools that indoctrinate children, they are talking about them and us. There's never about integration. And when you don't have any integration, clearly the rank and file, the majority would be prone to antipathy towards
Right, but there'll be a lot of people, not just Muslim people, a lot of people who would be very unhappy at the idea that if someone is shouting abuse or yanking at a Muslim woman's hijab, or being, you know, or worse, being, you know, I mean, physically attacking someone because they are openly Muslim and therefore identifiable as Muslim, that they are responsible for that. One can disagree with lots of, you know, what's going on in lots of mosques. You could disagree with a lot of the so-called self-appointed Muslim community leaders and some of their, I think, pretty questionable views in this space, or some of the teachings of Islam. But that doesn't mean anyone has a right or a justification to abuse a Muslim person who's randomly walking past them on the street.
Right, clearly it doesn't justify that. But the point is, you know, why are Muslims living in La La Land to think that their behavior, their conduct, for example, how many Muslims know that the hijab, the head covering, is not a requirement of the Quran? No. They've been told, listen, you must have it, otherwise you don't go to heaven. So the point is, these priests, these mosques, these schools, they are conditioning people into this sort of them and us mentality. As long as Muslims are not part of the society and apart from it, as long as they're not fully integrated into the society, we will have more right-wingers or extremists or bigots from any community.
You're saying that creates that. I mean, it is interesting, of course. I suppose there's an element where it's not just, obviously, Muslims don't have to have particular skin colour, but the large numbers of Muslims in this country would be darker skinned than the average Brit. But but also clothing would delineate somebody as being of the Muslim faith, and that creates, to a certain extent, you're saying some sort of separation. I mean, certainly the hijab, but the burqa. Can I just? Sorry.
Okay, let me just come in there. I mean,
okay.
Clothing. There's no such thing as Islamic clothing.
Yeah, but
I mean, so why are they bringing in the clothing from Pakistan or Saudi Arabia and saying, listen, this is Islamic, when there's nothing like that? All Islam asks you to be modestly dressed. It doesn't mean that you must have a shalwar kameez or some
don't wear a bikini in the street. I mean, you know,
right.
I certainly have. I mean, look, people. When I go to other countries, I'm still wearing. Again, if it's Muslim countries, a country requires modest clothing, then obviously one has to. When in Rome, one is respectful. I think that otherwise don't go to the country if you're not willing to do that. But I still wear Western clothing when I'm somewhere that isn't Western. So, but there is a difference between certain items of clothing. Say, for instance, in my view, the burqa and the niqab, which I consider to be utterly disgusting, appalling and unacceptable.
No, but it's also anti-Quranic. I mean, forget about you having disgusting views about that. I'm absolutely opposed to those contraptions because it's un-Quranic, it's un-Islamic, it's un-Muslim. But the priests and the mullahs propagated this as a uniform of Islam. Islam doesn't have a dress uniform. All you have to do is have righteousness, and righteousness is not on your clothing. Because I could have the most modest clothing and be the most immodest, immoral person around. So why have women especially been conditioned and brainwashed to think by wearing the head cover, wearing the face mask, somehow they have a ticket to paradise?
So can I just ask you, time is against us very briefly, Dr. Taj, what do you think the solution is? Look, obviously, people who are bigots and, you know, they should be keeping their thoughts and their words to them, and their hands certainly to themselves, and leaving people to live their lives. But your message, I suppose, you're saying that we can help solve this by more integration.
Absolutely. I mean, for example, firstly, we Muslims in this country must make a concerted effort to become fully integrated and not living apart in silos and ghettos. I mean, too many Muslims, for example, the Tell Mama report, there's not one word about integration and effective integration in there. It's all the fault of white majority people in this country. It's never the fault of the minority Muslim people in this country. So we Muslims must wake up, smell the coffee, become adapted and integrated in this society. And if we don't like it here, I'm not very rich, but I'll give you £10 for every one-way ticket to Sharia land. Whoever wants to leave for Sharia land, I'm going to give them a £10 one-way ticket not to come back.
Dr. Taj Imam, Director of the Oxford Institute for British Islam, thank you very much. Love to hear your thoughts on that, except my show's about to end. Benedict Spence going to give you a quick response.
I don't want to live in Sharia land, but I wouldn't mind £10 if he's just hanging it out. But no, he's right. Integration is actually the key thing here. And that word that he used, if you silo yourself and you don't integrate, you create more of a target on yourself. So, yeah, that's fairly commonsensical.
People still shouldn't be
They shouldn't, but you make it more likely that it's going to happen if you set yourself apart from the people who already live here and live a very different way of life. That's just how it, in any society.
Very interesting conversation. David Bull is also in. He's in for Ian Collins.
Good afternoon.
Yeah,
the French want more money to stop illegal immigration.
We're moving on. We're moving on.
Sorry, I was just going to say.
We're moving on.
Yeah, no. So the French want want more money to stop illegal immigration because we haven't spent enough. Apparently, £1.1 billion.
Listen, they've got those 3-hour lunches to buy for their.
Well, that's very true.
And their gitanes.
And escargot are very expensive, I imagine.
Well, Dr. Taj is giving away money, so maybe.